President Gonzalez, we are streaming.
Thank you. Welcome to the Board of Education meeting for Wednesday, July 16th, 2025. I call this meeting to order. I want to remind those speaking tonight that we do use the closed captioning feature on YouTube live stream, so please speak as clearly as possible. Now I ask that you stand if able and join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance in English and in
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Juro fidelidad a la bandera de los Estados Unidos de América y a la república que representa una nación bajo Dios, indivisible, con libertad y justicia para todos.
We'll now move on to our acknowledgement of tribal lands. We gratefully acknowledge the Native peoples on whose homelands we gather, as well as the diverse and vibrant Native communities who make their home here today. Now I'd like to ask for a moment of silence for those who have given their lives in service to their country. Thank you. Dr. Albright, may I have a roll call, please?
Josefina Dominguez.
Here.
Crystal Tapia Romero.
Here.
Heather Benavides.
Here.
Courtney Jackson.
Here.
Ronaldo Tomorito.
Here.
Janelle Astorga.
Here.
Danielle Gonzalez.
Here. Our next item is to consider adoption of the July 16th, 2025 Board of Education meeting agenda. I'd also like to remind board members that per the APS Board of Education Governance Manual, you can ask that an item be removed from the consent agenda before the meeting agenda is posted, but not during the meeting. Do we have a motion and a second?
I move we adopt the July 16th, 2025 Board of Education meeting agenda. This is Member Jackson.
Go ahead. I'll second. This is Board Member Benavides.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Josefina Dominguez.
Yes.
Crystal Tapia Romero.
Yes.
Heather Benavides.
Yes.
Courtney Jackson.
Yes.
Ronaldo Tomorito.
Yes.
Janelle Astorga.
Yes.
Danielle Gonzalez.
Yes. Our next item is to consider approval of the minutes from the Board of Education meetings on June 4th, 2025 and June 18th, 2025. Can we have a motion and a second?
I move to approve the minutes from the Board of Education meetings on June 4th, 2025 and June 18th, 2025. This is Member Jackson.
This is Member Dominguez. I second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Josefina Dominguez.
Yes.
Crystal Tapia Romero.
Yes.
Heather Benavides.
Yes.
Courtney Jackson.
Yes.
Ronaldo Tomorito.
Yes.
Janelle Astorga.
Yes.
Danielle Gonzalez.
Yes. Our next item is public forum. Board Secretary Astorga, can you please share the instructions for public forum?
Yes, thank you, President Gonzalez. It's good to be here with you all. I wish I was there in person. Welcome to our public forum guests. When you signed up to speak, you were asked to review rules and expectations, which our presiding officer will enforce. The New Mexico Open Meetings Act requires that our agenda specify in advance the items that will be discussed and voted on during the meeting. Therefore, public forum is not a dialogue among speakers and board members, but rather a chance to hear from our community. We will call participants to speak in the order they signed up, whether in person or virtual. Those here with you tonight will be asked to come to the microphone at the back of the room when their name is called. Online guests will stay in a virtual waiting room until it is their turn to speak. We have set aside 45 minutes for public forum. If there are 22 or fewer speakers, you will each have 2 minutes to speak. Otherwise, you will have 1 minute. Tonight, we have 5 speakers. Once your time is up, you will be asked to quickly wrap up. If you feel unable to convey your message, you may email boarded@aps.edu. In addition, for those of you there tonight, a representative from our service center is there to assist you. Mr. Gonzalez, please introduce the speakers.
Thank you, board member. Our first speaker tonight is Janet Sayers, and she'll be followed by Dr. Sinello. You'll have 2 minutes once you begin speaking.
All right, good evening, Madam Superintendent, Madam President, and members of the board. I have comments on a whole bunch of stuff. First of all, you know, when we pause to remember those who died while in serving their country, it occurred to me that we do have many APS students who served in law enforcement or perhaps corrections or something else, who, sometime we might consider just remembering those individuals. Secondly, John Milne, as we stand in the Milne meeting room and just remembering the person who served for 45 years. Superintendent Blakey, you're only in year 2. Now, if you go to 45 years, this could be a while. Anyway, 45 years superintendent of APS, just amazing. And then next, I did want to comment on several things on the tonight's consent agenda. I totally support making the parent-teacher conference days asynchronous. I think that means the kids stay home and are doing some kind of work on their computer. Anyway, I've always felt like those, given the number of parents that actually participate in those conferences, we're missing out on learning those couple days. I was excited to see that someone left $200,000 to KA&W radio, and I hope the APS radio station, and I hope that can be used to get more students involved in learning how to do public radio. And I was also excited to see that the new billboards that are going to be deriving revenue. And again, that was probably because Mr. Milne went out and bought all these tracts of land that were out in the middle of nowhere, back in the 1920s. So, and then next, on the 30th and the 31st is registration at Del Norte. You're very well invited to come and join us as we welcome students back. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker is Dr. Sinello. You have 2 minutes once you begin speaking, sir.
Well, good evening, Madam President and school board members and superintendent. I hope you and your family had so far have a good summer vacation. If not, take advantage of it before the school starts. I am an alternative health doctor and minister, and did you know, according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, New Mexico is now ranked second highest nationally for the rate of syphilis cases, and it is number 1 in the rate of congenital syphilis cases, a sexually transmitted infection that is passed from a pregnant woman to her unborn child. In the last 5 years, 203% increase nationally of congenital syphilis. Do you know why in the last 5 years? Open borders, sex trafficking, slavery, drug trafficking, dangerous COVID vaccine. And speaking of that, because that reduces the immune function of the individuals. Ineffective, unscientific masks, lockdowns, woke, transgender, and pornographic ideologies, and etc. Haven't we had enough? Do you remember your oath of office, section 22-5-4 of the Public School Code? A local school board shall have the following powers or duties. Subject A, point A, subject to the rules of the department, develop educational policy for a school district. Should you develop educational policies, not sexual policy or protecting children from indoctrination with gender or transgender ideology? Should we must return to common sense of biology reality this fall school season? May God bless us. May God bless, have mercy on APS and New Mexico. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is on Zoom. Actually, our next 2 speakers are on Zoom. First is Megan Long. Megan, you'll have 2 minutes once you begin speaking.
Thank you. Good evening, board members. I'm the parent of 2 APS students and a constituent of District 3. I've spoken at multiple meetings to express my distrust in the leadership and the majority that has taken over our school board. I fear that the latest push to appear transparent has more to do with the upcoming school board election than any responsibility or accountability to families and community members. Despite this attempt to quell concerns, we will continue to push for meaningful community engagement rather than robocalls, impromptu school site visits, and vague surveys. We refuse to be an afterthought
or misstep as you rubber stamp the actions of the superintendent. We will push for culturally competent coaching from in-state resources that can better meet the needs of our diverse students and communities. We will continue to watch, attend, and audit board meetings and communications to ensure they are meeting the requirements of the Open Meetings Act. While we count the pause on renewing the CGCS contract and the reversal of the board media policy a win, we will not stop there. This has only reinvigorated our community to continue fighting and holding the board accountable for the actions they take on the dais and behind closed doors. I encourage the public to instead question why this contract was extended initially and how the change to the media policy was made in the first place. Rather than applauding the putting out of fires, we should be asking how and why they were started. Public education is under attack on a national level, and it is the responsibility of parents, families, and the community members to ensure an equitable public education is accessible for our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Dr. Alex Duratke, I believe. You'll have 2 minutes once you begin speaking.
Yeah, you got it right. That was great. It's not that common, unfortunately. Hello, good evening, board members. I have a student at APS. I am a primary care physician here in Albuquerque. I moved here 6 years ago, quickly fell in love with New Mexico and decided to make it my long-term home. Unfortunately, my story is an uncommon one. Too many health professionals have chosen to leave this state. All my patients have to wait over a year to see specialists at time. Primary care is difficult to come by. And our community is in crisis over this. And there's obviously a lot of reasons for that. There's many reasons people choose not to live here or move out of state. But the one thing I do want to talk about tonight is the schools. When I first moved here 6 years ago, and I was trying to decide, should I stay here or not? I was told by many people, if you're going to stay here, don't put your kids at APS, go private, go to Santa Fe, do something else. And I am a big proponent of public education. I am a product of public education, and I did not think that was a reasonable thing to do. I decided I'm not doing that. I am going to put my kids in public school. And with that, I had a great experience. I have a rising first grader who really did great, and I really enjoyed the experience. And so why is this perception of APS in our public schools not meeting my experience? Why are people, despite having great schools, great people in these, why are we still having this perception? And I think that really comes down to transparency. I think obviously the current board members aren't to blame for some of the historical things that have been done by this public school system. But I do think that there are steps that can be taken to improve transparency going forward and help bring in the stakeholders and the parents into the process so that we can be a part of that and hopefully change our perception, and we can hopefully recruit more people who want to stay here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is in person, Mary Walker Herrera. And you'll have 2 minutes once you begin speaking.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam President and school board members and APS superintendent. Thank you for being here tonight, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Mary Walker Herrera. When a teacher hears a student making a statement directed to them saying that they want to change their name, their pronoun, what do teachers say? How do teachers handle a situation like this? Have they had any gender dysphoria training? Where did the training come from? What gender dysphoria training do APS school counselors get paid to do? Social workers, teachers, staff? Who sits with a student and asks why? What is going on in their world that tells them that changing their name, their pronoun, their gender will be a cure-all for deep-running psychological trauma, hurt, bullying, things that they've seen or heard in their young lives that they have come up with the idea of gender transition? And so begins a journey in which these children are not questioned or heard, but streamlined and applauded into an irreversible biological reality that, question, are they prepared for? And what if a child wants to detransition? This is a rapidly growing underserved population that the psychotherapy profession is generally unprepared to support. In an article from Psychology Today titled, "An surge in detransitioning cases, it was concluded that in an anonymous survey, detransitioners, quote, felt that they hadn't been given an adequate evaluation from a medical or mental health professional before starting the transition process, unquote. What can we do? As school board members, would you prevent this from happening in our community? Thank you for listening and thank you for letting me share.
Thank you. Our next speaker is on Zoom, Lauren Micklejohn. Lauren, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, you'll have 2 minutes once you begin speaking.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam President, members of the board. Tonight, I would like to speak about the process that you guys are about to enter in the request for proposals process to find and contract professional services for the board. I would like to suggest to you guys that this is an opportunity for you to demonstrate to the community that you have heard our feedback with regards to incorporating the input from parents and students and teachers into your process. I just want to point out the fact that CGCS and SOFG so suddenly disappeared from the agenda language without any meaningful public discussion makes the board's commitment to the public process seem a little more than smoke and mirrors, especially considering the board's issues with observing the Open Meetings Act in recent meetings. We expect this RFP process to be a reset, and it is an opportunity for it to become a reset, for the board to really show the community and parents who are concerned about the direction of APS and the board leadership that it can do better. And not through promises or rescission of language from agendas, but through action. Thank you all so much for your attention and your hard work. We really appreciate the service that the board provides our community.
Thank you. Our next speaker is in person, Renee Pacheco. And you'll have 2 minutes once you begin speaking.
All right, thank you for this time for listening. New Mexico Public Schools are 50th in the nation. Being leaders on the APS school board, you are in a leader's position to promote education. You are supposed to be preparing children to be a part of the world's workforce and society. They need to be able to read, write, and do arithmetic. There should not be anything above teaching the children. But instead of teaching, there is fighting against Trump with the teachers union, teaching about sex before the children are ready, and diagnosing them with gender identity problems. God created us male and female in his image with a plan for each one of us.
Thank you. Our next speaker is on Zoom, Gail Stewart. Are you there, Gail?
Yes, I am.
Okay, you'll have 2 minutes once you begin speaking.
Okay, great. I am here today to address the questions and answers for the board's meeting today. And I just want to commend the district for creating these, or the board for asking for them. I do review them each meeting to see about the accuracy and understanding reflected with regard to delivery of special education to students with disabilities. I'm specifically wanted to comment on question number 1 about APS's response that it was using the AIMS S for professional development with regard to professional development needed for teachers, math teachers, and the information shared and my review of the AIMS 4S or S4S information online indicates that this professional development is really skewed towards helping people working with English learners. And it doesn't have anything about specialized instruction for students with disabilities. And I found the information about that it's focused on diverse learners to be somewhat deceptive. In 2015, the U.S. Department of Ed put out a letter, a dear colleague letter, putting everybody on notice that English learners and students with disabilities do not have the same services, and conflating those two is rampant across school districts. It's also rampant in this district. And I don't think it's helpful to be putting out that a professional development, which is focused on teachers working with English learners, is also going to match the needs of teachers working with students with disabilities in math. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker is on Zoom. Dominica Chavez.
Good evening, Madam President and members of the board. My name is Dominica Chavez, and I serve as the Advocacy Manager at New Mexico Kids Can. Our organization is committed to fighting for the changes that will ensure New Mexico students are prepared to be the future civic and business leaders our state needs. That's why we're proud to support your strategic plan and student outcomes-focused governance. Tonight, you are engaging in progress monitoring for Goal 2, math proficiency, and conducting a board self-evaluation. This is powerful, important work that must be continued. Regularly checking your impact and holding yourselves accountable, especially in a public setting, is not easy. Many leaders avoid this entirely, but by staying focused on student outcomes, this board is acknowledging hard truths and taking meaningful action. You've set measurable goals, committed to transparency, and put a plan in place to move forward. That is what it means to put student learning first. And it's the kind of leadership our students need and deserve. Thank you for these efforts, and please continue to put student outcomes first.
Thank you. Our next speaker is in person, Amy Lisick. You'll have 2 minutes once you begin speaking.
Thank you. Good evening, APS school board members and Superintendent Blakey. My name is Amy and I'm the principal at Cleveland Middle School. I'm here to share our success specifically related to Goal 2 and our evolution to becoming the only public middle school in the state of New Mexico offering the International Baccalaureate Middle Years program. As Dr. Blakey included in her APS Rising first year report, Cleveland finished last year in the top 5 APS middle schools for growth in both math with a 15.5% increase and ELA with a 12.9% increase. Our work has been very intentional. We have prioritized building relationships, professional learning opportunities, collaboration, and using achievement data. As a new APS magnet, we prioritize the work to become fully accredited by implementing the IB-MYP philosophy, lesson planning, instruction, and assessments. We work to create a whole student according to the IB learner profile: inquirers, knowledgeable thinkers, communicators, principled, open-minded, caring, risk takers, balanced, and reflective. We used high-quality instructional materials by implementing the IB math texts, which teach math skills, but also add context and application. Teachers participate in an ongoing collaboration and alignment with state standards, iReady tests, and the Sandia High School IB diploma program. Some teachers use both IXL and Lexia Power-Up tutoring, and next year our master schedule includes daily high-dosage tutoring for all students. Cleveland's strength is its people. The teachers, educational assistants, kitchen and office staff, custodians, counselors, and administration team show up every day with a passion and a commitment to do well. Our demographic data shows that our student population mirrors the diversity of the school district as a whole. The vast variety of student and adult perspectives and experiences is our superpower. It is exactly what makes CMS extra special. Go Colts.
Thank you. And board members, that completes public forum.
Thank you to our public forum guests. The next item on our agenda is to consider acceptance of the progress monitoring reports for interim goals 2.1 and 2.2, which are math proficiency. For this, our presenters are Dr. Gabriela Duran Blakey, our superintendent, Dr. Antonio Gonzalez, our deputy superintendent for leadership and learning, and Sherry Jett, our chief academic officer. Tonight, we will be monitoring interim goals 2.1 and 2.2, measuring math proficiency. Before we begin, however, we need to confirm that our monitoring report is complete. I believe that all criteria for an effective report have been met, but I'll open the floor for anyone else on the board who thinks we may be missing one of the elements. Does anyone have any evidence that suggests we're missing any elements of the report?
No.
All right, excellent. Since everyone agrees that the required elements are present, we'll open the floor for a monitoring conversation. As a reminder, we have asked questions that are technical or tactical in nature before tonight's meeting. Those questions and their answers are posted with the agenda materials for the public to see. Each board member is expected to ask a question during the meeting to help us understand how the administration's actions align to the board's goals and guardrails. Those questions that we ask tonight must be SMART, meaning they must be strategic, measure-focused, ask-oriented, results-driven, and time-bound. And we will work to support each other through this process. So let's get started. Are there any opening remarks that the administration wanted to provide before we move into our questions?
Board President Gonzalez, we don't, although I do want to introduce Mr. Chris Sanchez, who's joining the team tonight. He, in our reorganization, is the Assistant Superintendent for middle schools. He's our lead Assistant Superintendent who will be a familiar face as we embark on the goals. And so for goal 2 now, you'll see Mr. Sanchez leading a lot of this work with Ms. Jett.
Great, thank you, Dr. Blakey, and welcome, Mr. Sanchez. I'll go ahead and just start to my right. Member Dominguez, do you have any SMART questions for our presenters?
I do, but before I embark on a SMART question, I have 2 technical questions that I think are important to better understanding end of year results. And I did submit them per our handout, technical, tactical, and strategic tips for effective monitoring question development. I did submit them a week ago. And this is in response to constituents from the Black Leadership Council who want to know the impact of enrollment at the end of the year, and if that is impacting the results on the test. So I wanted to put them at ease. What was the enrollment in 6th and 7th grades for each targeted population at the beginning and end of the year? And how did the changes in enrollment affect interpretation of interim results for these grade levels, particularly for each subgroup, if at all?
Thank you, Member Dominguez. And as a reminder, the reason we ask technical and tactical questions in advance is to make sure we have the appropriate staff able to answer them. So it looks like Dr. West has come to the table to be able to respond to that and is rapidly trying to pull up an answer. Dr. West, could we pause on this question to allow him to get the answer and we'll come back through? Okay, thank you. Member Tapia-Romero.
Yes, I am pulling up and is it okay if I circle back as well?
Yes, we will. Member Benavides.
Shockingly, I'm ready. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for being here. So my question is I'll give a little bit of context about my question because it's in regards to a question I asked during the tactical and technical pre-question. So what professional development have staff received and what more will be provided to math teachers working with English learners and students with disabilities? And the response was APS has worked to bring the AIMS 4S, I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong, training to K through 8 teachers. And so what strategies are in place to ensure long-term sustainability and scalability of this program across all schools?
Board member Benavides, Board President Gonzalez, Superintendent Blakey. AIM 4S Cubed, I believe it stands for Achievement-Inspired Math for Scaffolding Student Success. It is a set of strategies. So think of giving teachers tools in their tool belt to support our English language learners in the classrooms. It's a set of strategies that allows the students to interact with math in the classroom, but not only on top of that, it allows the students to interact with one another. So think of an English learner, they're all at different levels. They might be a level 5 on listening, but they might be a level 2 in speaking. So they're able to interact with one another on a math problem using this specific set of strategies of AIM4SQ.
Good evening, Board President, Superintendent Blakey, members of the board. Thank you for the question, Board Member Benavides. I would say to the idea of scalability, you know, one thing we have a year's worth of data now to look at, and we have a year's worth of stories behind that data. And so what Mr. Sanchez just articulated is part of that story. And so as we go through and we're really looking for the best practices, we're leaning into what does make a difference in terms of improving student outcomes. So as we begin to really, I would say, pinpoint those strategies, that is where we would want to lean in and invest. We know we're going into maybe some lean times. We have to get really targeted in terms of how we are working with our classrooms and our teachers, and really what is going to have the highest return on learning.
Thank you for the background and for the answer to the question. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Dr. Gonzalez, did you want to jump in? It looks like you might want.
President Gonzalez, Member Benavides, members of the board, Dr. Blakey. I would just add to that, as fundamental as it sounds, really being very intentional with time, adult time, teacher time, and being creative with the way we schedule students, being creative on the lessons learned of how we have had creative scheduling initiatives to open up time for the adults to engage in professional development like the one cited in response to the question. Differentiation is differentiation, and it's good whether you're an ELL kiddo, a student with disabilities, a student who is proficient but needs to be taken to another level in their educational academic journey. So we recognize that one of the things when we talk to our teachers that they need in their professional development work, in their professional practice is time. That is the thing you hear of over and over again. So that's the burden that we think about in terms of how do we leverage best practices like Genius Hour, that we are able to enrich the educational experience of our students while also being able to open up time for adults to engage and collaborate, to have professional development like the one cited in the response to the question, but also talk to each other, evaluate student work, discuss the progress or lack thereof of individual students. We talk a lot about redesign in regards to our middle school and our high school experience. Well, that time for teachers is going to be fundamental to that work.
Thank you. Member Jackson.
Thank you. The first thing that I wanted to point out, which I think might help Board Member Dominguez's question, is if you look at the bottom of page 3, there is a separate table where the disaggregated data has been provided for us, and it does give the specific number. It might not be the before and the after, but it does give the number of students that were tested in 23-24 at 116. I'm sure Dr. West will correct me if I'm wrong, but just wanted to point that out, that the disaggregated data has been provided to us. If I can go down to page 7/8, and I'm looking specifically at goal 2.1 for the 6th grade, because to me, 6th grade seems like the fundamental, the start of the shift, right? You're going from elementary school to middle school. So I was looking at that data. I want to first point out that I absolutely love the fact that you guys are using coaches in the schools, especially for the priority and the emerging schools. I think that definitely is a best practice, and kind of highlights that we all need coaches, right? We all need somebody to just make sure that we're staying on track. I also really like that you are allowing the principals to take charge of their site and providing site-specific systems and structures. So my question kind of leads into that. At the bottom of page 7 and leading into page 8, it says that furthermore, principals will receive training and coaching from the assistant superintendents to support setting expectations and support systems that ensure this shift in teaching and learning is occurring. To me, that is two separate issues. There's a shift in teaching and there's a shift in learning. So how will you ensure fidelity to your incredible strategy? I mean, just as a third aside, this document is chock full of strategies that are very well thought out, and I applaud you for that. But what strategy will you use to ensure fidelity to what you guys have laid out for us in the use of grade level, high quality instructional material, given that sometimes requirements to use those materials are not there?
Board Member Jackson, thank you for the question. I'll start us off, and then I would encourage Mr. Sanchez. We just had this conversation earlier today about how some of those systems get set up and how we support our schools in doing that. Really, in terms of the fidelity to the programming, a lot of this is going to be about monitoring. So I even wrote down at some point today, we need to monitor what we're monitoring. One thing that we are committed to doing better is understanding what the performance indicators are that would tell us that our strategies are on track. And we also feel confident because we have our teaching and learning coaches in the school. They're able to report back to us how that work is happening. What are the shifts we need to make? So the systems that we've put in place allow for more of a just-in-time approach to any shifts that have to happen. And through that, I think we're able to ensure that fidelity, mainly because we're making a commitment to monitor it. And as we look at what those systems are, what those indicators are in our teaching and learning work, for example, I'm thinking about data literacy. It's very important to us that our teachers are using the assessment data that they have to identify specific skill gaps that students have, and then have the instruction, the teaching that addresses that learning need. How do our teaching and learning coaches then help the teacher do that, plan the lesson, create the small group work, and then make sure that we have some kind of assessment in place to ensure that the students are getting that? This is a much more like tailored approach to how our students, I think, interact with the content. They have an opportunity to really get exactly what they need through the use of our coaches and how we're looking to shift adult practice.
May I ask a follow-up?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So, sorry, Ms. Sanchez, did you have a? So I actually had a follow-up to that, which I think that you can probably elaborate. You started. So what strategy will you use to teach up the teachers if and when their analysis of the integrated systems might fall short? How will you know if that analysis is off? Like the strategy's there, you just alluded to it. It's just, the just-in-time approach. But what's the next step if the just-in-time approach you realize is maybe not working?
Thank you for that. We can definitely talk some about that. By having this information come back to us, I'm thinking of like a two-way communication model. And sometimes things just sort of get stuck in the school level. But through our educational resources team and also through our principal leadership academies that we've been talking about, we feel confident that we're going to have more of that two-way communication. So first of all, we're going to know when our strategies are not being effective. And then it comes to our team of experts through our ed resources team, through our variety of departments who have the expertise to help us make those shifts. I don't want to necessarily say, well, this is the exact shift we're going to make, because I want that shift to be tailored to what we're seeing in terms of the practices. And if we're not satisfied with the outcomes we're getting, that we are, doing that root cause analysis and we're able to make the appropriate changes.
Madam President, may I say one more thing?
No. Mr. Sanchez, did you want to jump in and fill in on any of that?
Yes, Board President Gonzalez, Superintendent Blakely, Ms. Jackson. The job of the assistant superintendents is to go into the school scene. We are there to ensure that that communication is happening. So through the performance framework, we have lined up coaching sessions with all of our principals. So if you're a priority school, you're receiving monthly coaching sessions, which, for example, I would be going over to Georgia O'Keeffe if they were a priority school. I'd be meeting with that principal monthly and having focused conversations regarding accelerated learning. How is the implementation of accelerated learning going in the classroom? Standards-based instruction, which is an essential practice of accelerated learning, and working with the principal on how it's being implemented and to what supports they might need. And then I would come back and work with the district departments in supporting that school, specific grade levels, specific teachers, to increase those aspects of the essential practices.
Thank you. Did that help clarify what would have been your follow-up? Are you done?
It did. I mean, I think what you clarified was that piece of the two-way communication. You are that piece that is allowing the two-way communication to happen between the schools and the district to understand if and when there's a need to pivot, right? So, and I just wanted to say, like, we should be celebrating. I understand that we are asking you guys very strategic questions based on what you've provided us, but there is really good news in this report that could be reported. If you know this is good. You guys have done a great job, and we're on track. What?
Noah.
Thank you, Board Member Jackson.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Member Tomorito.
Yes, maybe my question based on Gail Stewart, I can email to you because we don't have that particular information before us, because that would be my question too, but I can send that to you. But my other question is, when we're looking at family engagement, you stated that you were using the Johns Hopkins University and Education Week research. And it talked about the two-way family communication. And I know there's strategies, but it's also stated that one, to look at academic progress and how to inform families better. That was on page 9 under the 2.2. In the first one, based on the other family engagement with the first grade, the first grade, it stated there was also two-way communication and how to make that better also. So can you give me a few of your strategies on how to impact the two-way communication that you're looking at? And what barriers are you seeing to that two-way communication? And hopefully to also include and help families to understand better not only about your processes and what's going on, but how will those sessions also become listening sessions to really hear what the parents are going through?
Thank you, Board Member Tomorito. You're right in saying that this strategy is reflected in both 2.1 and 2.2. Our family school communication, we believe, is a pivotal place where we can help families understand the importance of the work we're doing at school. Not to say they don't think it's important, but we all know school from our previous school experiences, and school is different today. And so we really, when we work with our 6th graders, we're thinking about that transition from 5th to 6th grade and really ensuring that our families not only have an opportunity to hear from the school about how that's different, but then to also interact and get more information when they feel they need it. The 7th grade two-way communication, in particular to interim goal 2.2, is really about the importance of those assessments and how we are preparing students for particularly algebra, which we know is a gatekeeper class before high school graduation. So we do want to really lean into some more specifics I have I think I've told you, a fifth going into sixth grade daughter. I've sort of tapped out on some of my math. Like I'm gonna have to start looking it up, right? And that's fair. Like some of these things we haven't done in a long time. So how do we help families see like this is what the student is doing? This is how we can talk about it in home, in the real world. And I think an important part of that is our shift towards interdisciplinary learning. So really working with our middle school teachers to not teach these contents in isolation, but rather from a real world perspective and allowing more opportunities to see the application, because the application is in family life too. Like when we talk about the application of learning, it isn't limited to one place, right? Like our lives are really complex and diverse. So having that two-way communication and thinking about, well, what does it look like in the home? I would say a barrier that we run up against is sometimes as students enter young adolescence, there is sort of a pullback from parents for whatever reason. And so how do we continue to engage the parents? I think also one thing that we've talked about and that we heard some of the schools do really well who had made gains was using a variety of platforms to get consistent messaging out about attendance, behavior, the importance of assessments, the fact that an assessment is coming up, you know, how to help your student be successful. If we aren't, from the district perspective, we can do a better job of removing the barrier about what that message is. And so that is one way that we're beginning to address that is think about, okay, we all know that the iReady window is opening. So what is our message and how do we use our various channels to get that out? Even through, you know, our community school impact coordinator, they have a role in helping our families understand what is happening and the importance of us getting good data so we can really help our students. I hope that answered your question.
Can I provide a follow? Go ahead. And how would that look for our Martinez Yazzie subgroups families?
Sure. You know, there's a variety of ways that we're attempting to engage our Yazzie Martinez families, including African-American students. Certainly, you know, making sure that we're using languages that are accessible to our families. That's a commitment that we have as a district. And I would say, you know, anytime we're looking at communication and different platforms, we're really leaning into translation and interpretation services. In addition, our Yazzie Martinez and African-American families also live in this really diverse and complex world and have experiences that help to inform our interdisciplinary work, the experiences of being a part of the 21st century. So thinking about how we use like our family advisory councils, other things that our principals put in place. Maybe you can help me with some specifics. In terms of getting that student and parent voice, because I think both are important. I also think this is an area where we can grow, and I'm really interested as we go down this interdisciplinary path, how we do that. Yeah.
In addition to that, all of our middle schools have implemented a principal advisory committee that has created a diverse group of students within the school. And principals are getting lots of feedback on how to adjust instruction, how to adjust their budgets, how to communicate with families from these packs that are happening within the schools. We also have our principal expectation tool that was rolled out last year. Within that expectation tool, is how one of the essential practices is how are principals communicating with their families. In addition to, and lastly, is the implementation that we'll be rolling out next month in all the middle schools of the web program, where when we're talking specifically about sixth graders, how are we supporting them and making the middle school experience as welcoming and warm for them as possible so that they are able to communicate, I need help with math, or how do I inform my parents about what's happening there through an 8th grade mentor? So we have systems in place to support the kids. We know that we are currently working on sharpening those systems up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Member Astorga, are you in a place where you can ask your question?
Yes, I am. Thank you. Before I ask my question, I actually do have a follow-up to Board Member Tomorito's question. Is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Awesome. Yeah, so just following up on the communication between families, and I know this information might not be available right now, but do we do data on how well robocalls are for communication versus like mailers versus school flyers?
President Gonzalez, Member Astorga, members of the board, Dr. Blakey, we do have analytics that inform the number of robocalls through School Messenger that are going out, the number that are connected, the number of phones that are disconnected. So we do have that analytics that informs our strategy in terms of connecting that way. We also have data that informs in-person meetings. I also want to draw to the board's attention in response to Board Member Tomorito's question is that there's a lot to be gleaned on the work that was done last year in relationship to the guardrails and the accountability that is put onto the administration through the interims. Specifically, the work of Guardrail 5, I believe, which is the instructional council in participation of parents. So we now have that data where we are accountable to ensure that there is parent voice on a critically important body at every school's campus, the instructional council. That's being monitored, that's being held accountable to ensure when these academic programmatic decisions are taking place, these discussions, that we have that data. We also have a lot to learn from the best practices at the 70-ish community schools that we have. There are best practices that our community schools and our non-community schools can glean from in terms of best practices for really supporting this two-way communication for our parents in a dynamic, interactive way. We do have that data and a pretty diverse set of data to inform that piece.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And yes, instructional councils are amazing. And I know that they have been a great asset for all of our schools, and especially when it comes to engagement and involvement. So for my question, before I ask it, I just want to say I love your reports. I feel like they're always full of information, and it's hard to ask very strategic questions because you are all on top of it. So thank you so much for all the work you put into it. But I am going to follow up on the conversation you all were having about coaches and coaching. So on interim goal 2.1, one of the next steps is to give each school differentiated support that will be led by, quote, teaching and learning coaches at priority and emerging schools and by district middle school interdisciplinary experts and monitored by school principals for impact and effectiveness. So my question is, what is the district strategy to have consistent and adequate support by the coaches? For example, is there capacity for each school to have their own coach, or have the targeted schools already identified any additional supports that they might need?
Madam President, Member Astorga, members of the board, Dr. Blakey. So we use the performance framework to inform these decisions because we have a finite amount of resources. And these resources are deployed to beginning with our priority schools, moving into our emerging schools, and then so on. So I'm happy to share that next year, every priority school will have the coach that you cite in your question. There will be capacity building in that the chief academic officer and her team will be offering monthly professional development to ensure the minimization of variability amongst what we're doing with this group. Really, it is a new service. It is a new coach. It is a new support to schools to really leverage these strategies, bring them to life in a way that is meaningful for the teachers and practitioners in the classrooms. So a lot of thought and intentionality has gone into building our support plan at the central level so that we are able to support not only the teaching and learning coaches, but also our community school coordinators and our student success resource teachers. We have this trio, if you will, of support, comprehensive support to our priority schools, moving into our emerging schools, to be able to bring these strategies to life in a way that is actualized and has an impact The other thing that I would say that I think is important is we're all looking at the same thing. In a month or so, we will have before the board Guardrail 2, which talks about school visits and the assistant, it goes back to the accountability question. And in there, what you're going to see is that every school has a scorecard, which is mirrored on the goals of the district. So they are tracking the same way we are tracking here at the local level in relationship to the indicators brought forth by the community through the board to the school district to work on. So I think that's important, and we're all looking at the same thing in terms of the common language and common expectations.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I have one quick follow-up. With everything that you've discussed with the coaches and the extra professional development and the resources, are we seeing any pushbacks or setbacks that might occur with loss of federal funding?
Madam President, members of the board, Member Astorga, Dr. Blakey, the reality is that several of these positions currently moving into next year are funded through various forms of federal funding, be it Title II, III, IV, or Medicaid. We know that these funds are in different stages of question in regards to the standing injunction and implications involved in the recent legislation passed at the federal level. We have several scenario plans in place to address any number of realities that may manifest themselves in front of us. The good news is, due to strong fiscal planning on the part of the district, we are able to cover these positions in their entirety through the 25-26 school year. That will give us time to be able to truly continue strategic planning, scenario planning in relationship to service to students, which is our guiding light in terms of minimizing any impact to the student.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I appreciate the team's effort to always stay before the issue, right? And always making sure that there's plans. So yeah, thank you all.
Thank you, Member Astorga. I want to also thank the team for a great report that's very comprehensive, that includes all of the data that we need and the strategies. But I think most importantly, to call out that we are on track. We are on track for meeting our math goals. We're on track for meeting the goals for these Martinez-Yazzie students, and that's definitely worth celebrating, super exciting. I hear a lot of questions in the community about like, are you on track or off track? And so I think it's really important to just say loud and clear, we are on track. And as we're on track, we're learning about what we can change and improve. So I just want to celebrate you all and the superintendent for the great work that you've done so far. My question was already asked, and so I'm going to reframe a little bit. Part of my question initially was on what are the barriers that are getting in the way? So given that there was less growth for the Martinez-Yazzie students, particularly in numbers and operations and measurement and data, there's a chance that there could be some sort of a plateau or some barrier there. And so I do still have a question around what are the barriers that are getting in the way or potentially getting in the way. And you spoke already to challenges with time, broadly, time for teachers, time for students, and also lack of time for collaboration and interdisciplinary learning. So I feel like the barriers are very clear and real, but I wanted to just see, are there other barriers that might be getting in the way or that we might anticipate, or where board policy or other policy might be causing challenges?
Board President Gonzalez, members of the board, I would say that one of the barriers is just that we are in a human element of business. And so, you know, with all of these data, we have different students and each student has their own story. So the more that we're able to put systems in place that provide the system structures and supports for our students, the more we'll see the organization start to move. But because there's a human element and all of these, behind all these numbers are different individual students each year, I think that that's just a natural barrier that we have to make sure that we really stick with what we're doing. Because this year I do feel this sense of like, are we still doing this? Are we not doing it? Are we doing something new? Did it work? Did it not work? And to really see institutional change, you have to stick with something. And so if you see that, oh man, I wish we could have gone up another half, you can if you stick with it and that you're really intentional and you don't get distracted, like, wait, this might move us faster. But what will move us faster is actually being really on point and strategic with our systems and structures. We do need to continue to look for different time for our teachers, because you need time to look at data to be able to then adjust your lessons. And so if we're not able to provide that for the teachers, they know what they need to do. But it's like if you're just going from meeting to meeting to meeting, you're like, well, I need time to actually do my work. And it's not a fair expectation that teachers do that at night at home when they're trying to feed their families. And so how we're able to really put that in the workday for teachers is really important. That's definitely a barrier that I think we face. And the schools that we've seen deliver like these results that are really high have creatively figured out how to crack that collaboration code, so to say.
Thank you. My other question, similarly related to this question of time. So it's on pages 8 and 9 where you talk about the work across sort of looking at multiple measures, multiple components, student success systems, the performance framework, the iReady data, everything sort of coming together. And how, I guess my question, poorly worded, is like, how do we make it go faster? And I'll say it in this way. I too have middle school kids and had a kiddo going through 6th grade math last year and struggled at the beginning of the year and struggled. And we went through that first parent teacher conference. Okay, they're struggling. All right, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to assess them again. Like, okay, they're struggling. Okay, well, we're going to assess them again. Okay, we're going to provide the teacher professional development. Okay, then came the middle of year test, still struggling. All the way to the end of the year, still struggling. And it was sort of like we had identified that someone out there is struggling. The kid is in the ocean drowning. And we all have the life preservers, vests, things on the beach, but we don't know who's going to send it out there and when and how and quick enough. And that's what I experienced with my kiddo who then didn't pass 6th grade math. And so how do we make sure that these great strategies that you're talking about here happen fast enough? And so we can go and train teachers on new strategies. We can provide time for interdisciplinary learning. So my question is like, how do you move quickly? Like, is it those coaches? I haven't heard anything about tutoring. Like, for example, for my kiddo, I'm like, all right, is it just these standards that we know he's missing? Because you just tutor him on that? Like, can you? Thinking too about summer school, like how we're using summer school as remedial time. Haven't really heard anything about that. And I know in the context and the research base around the importance of shifting away from remedial instruction towards accelerating, there is still, and I hear a lot from people around, well, they're not on grade level and we need to get them up. So there's still that constant debate between remediation and acceleration. And so that's a long-winded way of saying is how do we do it faster and better with the current constraints that we have?
Board President, and I may have Ms. Jett help answer some of the specifics. You mentioned high dosage tutoring, and that
regular tutoring, but
high dosage tutoring is really one of the ways to do that. Now it is very human and monetary and time intensive, but it is, if you want to move faster, research does show that it is not productive for students to wait until summer school to then catch up on what they're missing at the time. So often what we see are families that have access to tutors, hire a tutor, they work with their student, they catch them up on math, and they're able to catch up. And that's really that, like, if we really want to intervene right then with Gabriella, who's struggling in 6th grade math, being able to identify how we can find the means to expand high dosage tutoring is during the day, like during the school day is the other part. that really is an element that we haven't cracked yet in logistics that moves students faster. And often is where you see an opportunity gap because there are families that are able to provide that to students, and not all families can.
Thank you, Dr. Blakey. I agree. High dosage tutoring is the fastest way. So to answer the question, and that is one of our promising practices. But because of the intensity of the type of intervention, figuring out how to implement that at school sites has been a challenge, I'll just be honest. I do think high dosage tutoring, though, depends on the system that we talked about in making sure that we truly understand what the learning gap is that the student has. And so the systems we're putting in place in terms of getting really good at using our data platforms, really clearly understanding the learning gaps that a student might have, and then beginning to address that. Like we could have lots of high dosage tutoring, but if we're not tutoring the student on the right element, it may not, we're leaving too much to chance. So while we work on high dosage tutoring, because we know its impact and we know it is speedy, our systems implementation is really, really important so that we do understand what our students need and we can be really targeted.
Great, thank you for that. Dr. West, you are ready with an answer around attendance and enrollment end of year tests.
Board President Gonzalez, Member Dominguez, Superintendent Blakey, I always appreciate the honorary degree, but I do appreciate it. So just so you know, so we treat assessment very seriously in this district because it is an interruption to the day. So in doing so, we, with all of our assessments, whether it's our interim assessment or our summative assessment, like the NMSSA, we make sure we go for that 95% as our baseline. So we make sure that all of our students are assessed. The reason we do that is because when we're presenting this information to you, we're actually talking about all of our students. We're not just talking about a sample of our students. So that way, what we see in our interim assessments, the goal of the interim assessment is to inform instruction. And the Martinez-Yazzie decision, if you have read as many times as I have, many of the facts that are used in that case are actually their test results. They're coming from NAEP, they're coming from our state assessment results. So we take those results very seriously. And in every one of our schools, we have somebody, we call them school testing coordinators. And then we have a district test coordinator, who in our case is our Senior Director of Assessment, Frank Helga. So between him and the school test coordinators, they're expected to hit that 95%. And that position is actually in state statute. So all those individuals have their licenses also tied to that expectation. So we make sure there's multiple opportunities to give students this assessment. So we watch those, we monitor it during every window. So we make sure that all the students are assessed. And if they're not, we've actually implemented a process where then people have to document why they weren't tested. And why do we do that? Because if you don't assess everybody, you don't really know if those gaps are there or not. So we make sure that all of our students are tested. So if we saw, I mean, actually we have trackers and everything too that get updated during testing period. But I know like our African-American students, those students, I just looked at our enrollment dashboard and then I also looked at our internal dashboard and we're assessing those kids. So would there be the instance where there would be, the difference would be if we were comparing apples to oranges in the sense that, let's say, well, you guys only tested 70% of African-American students in the fall, and in the spring you tested 50%. What's going on there? But because we're ensuring that all of our students are assessing, we don't see those as being problems to interpreting our data. So hopefully it's a long answer, but hopefully it explains.
I don't know that will, okay, so I do the best I can when I'm out and about in public, but once we get into these, and this person is wicked smart about data, so, and I'm not, so, and I don't have you next to me. So again, the line of thinking from the council, the Black Leadership Council, is this. They want assurances that the same number of kids that started 6th grade and 7th grade are in fact the same number that are being tested at the end. There's some suspicion that we have have we lost them? Have they quit going? Have they been disciplined out of the system? And so I'm trying to ask a question here that reassures that population that I'm trying to give them the right answer.
Board President Gonzalez, Board Member Dominguez, Superintendent Blakey. So we, like I said, we make sure that all students have the opportunity to assess. And when I look at the data, so we have roughly 125. So students that are Black or African American that are non-Hispanic in grade 6 and grade 7. So when I look at that
combined,
so no, per grade. So 250. So when I see that, and then I go look at the test results, and I see 120 students tested, I know that 5 students didn't test, but I also know that because of the work that we do, that stuff is documented, so that it wasn't that there wasn't an attempt to test the student. I also know that in the middle school, I think some of the things you're talking about, which unfortunately I think sometimes gets a little confused with this, is thinking that there's mobility or something going on where the student is not at school or they're moving schools. Those students are being tested. So we don't see that mobility until that, what's really going on there is we see our dropouts of high school. So that idea is that the same kid, that doesn't really happen in terms of middle school and elementary school. That's
Mr. West, if you could just get closer to the mic.
sorry.
Member Astorga is having a hard time hearing. on
Sorry.
mic.
Sorry about that. We don't see that being an issue in middle school and elementary school because we don't, well, even if a student moves, they're still being assessed. So in each of our testing windows they're basically a month long. That doesn't mean that the students are testing every day in that month. That means that this teacher has the opportunity to test. And then if there's anybody who doesn't test, we then try to keep having opportunities for them to test during that month. And I can assure you that we don't have, there are not gaps in our data like that because we watch them like a hawk because we make sure that they're hitting those 95% levels.
okay, so I can go back and assure the council that we started with 125 students the most recent year.
Yeah, so if you guys ever go to the APS dashboard and you go to the enrollment demographic screen, and then you can see on there that we had one. So if you look in terms of the race and ethnicity breakdown there, you'll see that we had 2.8% of our students who were African American. So a little tip there is if you click on that 2.8%, it'll actually filter the whole thing. So I can tell you that's how I know that there were 123 African American non-Hispanic students in 6th grade at the beginning of the year, and there were 121 in 7th grade. And I can tell you that they were tested because they were in school.
That so we didn't lose any by the end. We were testing 95% of them.
Yes.
But and so all I have to do is touch on or click on that.
So Member Dominguez, Mr. West,
Yes.
If we can try to get out of the technical and tactical detail here to get to the strategic question, that would be great. We can make sure that we understand how to get Member Dominguez the data and also how to make sure that the members of the council are getting the answers they need. So whether that's referring them to Mr. West or to Ms. Campos, who meets directly with them, or whatever the internal structures exist, that would be really helpful. So if there are other technical questions that you have that'll inform your strategic question, you can go ahead with those.
I'm ready for the strategic, great, which is, so, and keep in mind, I'm trying to understand 3/4 of our conversation should be trying to understand the current reality of students. In this case, 6th graders and 7th graders. And so I'm trying to get a better understanding of where have we been? What has been happening this year? And where are we now? And how does that, I'm trying to understand what impacted the superintendent's interpretation of the data. So while in the aggregate, we're on target, absolutely. But when we disaggregate our data, we see that, for example, Native American students for the second year in a row experienced increased end of the year math proficiencies. Hallelujah. Something worked there. So like, what happened, right? What happened? But then we go to English language learners and we see that they're flat. So why, right? That's what we're after. I'm after. And students with disabilities experience less growth between the middle of the year and the end of the year assessments than last school year. So they're flat. So while there is a lot to celebrate in the aggregate, I want to know how, what were the strategies that worked with Native American students? What have you learned from that? And how is that informing some solution to those kids who are not growing the same way? And interestingly, I'm disappointed that we did not get key observations on African American students, because I think they did. If I'm looking at this disaggregated information correctly, I can go back and say, rest assured, Council, Black Leadership Council, that the increase there that you see at the end of the year is real. So what worked with these two demographics? What happened this year? And how do we, well, what worked? I'll leave it at that. What strategies worked?
Thank you for the question, Board Member Dominguez. I'm actually very excited to talk about what worked because it is what informed our strategies in this progress monitoring document as we move forward. Mr. Sanchez was instrumental in helping us look at where our gains were, particularly by student population, and then working with the principals to find those stories. And so I know in progress monitoring, you get a sort of generalized approach to the strategies. We don't always include all the details. Sometimes I wish I had a whiteboard down here and we could just really break it down. But the strategies that we see that were most impactful were, number one, a system where teachers were able to have time together to look very carefully at the data and look at that data by student population, including our African American and Native American students, and then work together to come up with sophisticated interventions that were going to support the student. And I'm using intervention broadly. We've talked about academic intervention. When we know exactly the skill gap that the student has, we can address it. But there may be other barriers that were standing in the way of student achievement. And so by, for example, looking at attendance and using our community school coordinators, or even just working with families, what is going on with attendance? How can we help you with this? How can we help you access school in a way that works for you? Those were a lot of the really, again, sophisticated conversations that the schools that made the gains were able to have. And they're also, I don't know if you can speak to Tony Hillerman. Would you be? We think about it. We do know that there were schools that made gains, and I'm looking at Mr. Sanchez because I don't know that I can speak well to the details, but we would be able to do that offline because they did do very specific strategies, particularly around their Native American students. So I can't stress enough the importance of this collaborative time and the systems and the coaching that help our teachers really recognize what the individual needs of the students are, and then how we address those needs versus here's a one size fits all. That isn't going to work.
So I'm going to circle back to what Gail Stewart pointed out with regard to special education students. So, how then is, what's missing there? Because you mentioned differentiation, and I'm assuming, so please clarify. Her point was that the program aims for S cubed, or yes, is not appropriate for special ed students. And that's her observation. And scores would indicate that something's not working. And so if there's differentiation happening, again, it's not giving results. So, or I don't know, I'm making this up, I'm asking you, but these are the pieces that I'm hearing. And so what's happening, and what's the strategy to address it? What have the schools been doing that prevented special education school students to progress?
Board Member Dominguez, members of the board, Superintendent Blakey. I can't tell you the exact story of Tony Hillerman, but I can tell you what schools have been doing. And we know we need to do better in a lot of areas. Few years ago, I was a principal support specialist. I would go out and work with principals, and it was more of, how are you doing? Keeping them afloat. I never recall having a challenging conversation with them in regards to how their school was performing. This current year, the conversations that we are having as assistant superintendents with principals is looking at all of their data and asking them, what systems do you have in place to support students, whether it's EL students, special ed students, African-American students, what are the systems in place? And it's not just a one and done conversation. I am then following that conversation up the next time I have a scheduled meeting with that principal. And there's this sense, I tell the principals that I work with, I want to create a sense of healthy urgency with all of them. I know that toxic urgency, it's going to feel that way, but want to create this sense of healthy urgency. So even though our data with special ed students might be flat at a grade level, I do think that we need to know that. So then I can go out and focus on that specifically with the principals and work with them in saying, let's pull your SPED data. Let's look at the strategies that need to be put in place to support, but also continue to follow up with them the next time I meet with them. It's not a one and done.
Right. And I guess I'm suggesting it's a root cause analysis that needs to happen with. Yes, I'm trying to figure out, and I'm not hearing that there's been a deep dive on a targeted study of why students with disabilities took a dive. So, and dive is overstated, but they did not grow and they did decrease. So.
Thank you. Member Tapia Romero, we'll come back to you.
Thank you. So my question is somewhat related to yours, President Gonzalez, about the strategies that are listed here in our report, because obviously the strategies make complete sense, but to ensure autonomy happening across all schools, are there any specific incentives? I know Board Gonzalez asked about, can we fast track, but how do we, or are we providing any type of incentives to the schools, the staff, teachers, principals, to truly ensure that these strategies are going to be implemented? Because I love what you reported. I love the intent behind it, but to ensure that we have autonomy across all of our schools, what is that looking like for the district?
Gonzalez, member Tapia Romero, Superintendent Blakey, members of the board. I think this answer may help with Member Dominguez's question as well. I hope. One of the things we do with every single progress monitoring process is we look at the top 5 schools that gained, and we look at the schools on the other side of that, the 5 schools that did not. What do we learn from each of those student groups? As you can see in the progress monitoring document, you will see on top of the required table, you will see the disaggregated data by student group that we are looking at, the Ozzie Martinez plus African American. So through that process, what we're doing is we're looking at the schools and we're seeing what's happening. Mr. Sanchez and his team are having conversations with those schools. Sometimes we offer Google Forms to collect stories to inform our practice. Sometimes these conversations are gathered through the coaching visits that the assistant superintendent takes part in. Sometimes these conversations are part of principal meetings where a dynamic conversation takes place in relationship to the work. The stories are being teased out. What is happening in terms of motivation, to your point, is, and this might sound fundamental, but in the world of an educator, in the world of a principal, it's huge. At our principal meetings, one of the things, the leadership of Superintendent Blakey, at the end of the year, for example, the schools that made the highest gains in every single one of the goals, including goal 2, the 5 top schools were brought up in front of their peers and they were celebrated. And the emotion in the face of these principals was profound because they are being forth as examples amongst their peers, hardworking principals. The principalship is a hard job. But to be able to be there in front of them and say, you know what, I need to talk to you. You did something great. That's an incentive that is really huge in terms of, I don't know, maybe even bigger than any strategy that we read about tonight. Because what it's doing is it is actualizing the goals that we're working on in the fabric and the being of these practitioners. Because the human condition is that they want to be successful. These principals want to be successful. We have given them a common target, and we are creating an environment and a culture where folks are able to see what's working, talk to each other, dig into the data, share these progress monitoring reports with them month after month after month. And one of the things that we need to be called to action, and we appreciate these conversations because we learn too. And hopefully what you see is a culture of continuous improvement in these documents is what is the specificity per student group? And that is taken to heart. I want to tell you that Mr. West will correct me if I'm wrong with this, but I don't think I am. We're looking at the interim goals, and this is cohort data. Therefore, it's deceiving to compare year to year because you're looking at different kids. So in relationship to the question that was asked is, what did we learn? Well, I think we learned a few things. Number one, we are all talking the same language. Therefore, when an assistant superintendent speaks to the principal about their progress or lack thereof along the lines of these goals, what they're able to see is it's the same student groups. Therefore, we're digging deeper with 6th grade Native American students at Jackson Middle School. So we're looking at that student group, which will be a different conversation if we're looking at interim assessment data next year. So it's just, I think, an important piece to take into consideration. I hope I did justice to a little bit to both of your questions.
No, that was helpful. Thank you. And just for a clarification on something you said earlier, when we talk about like accountability metrics, are you referring more to the scorecard that you've all introduced? Because I've heard you talk about that numerous times now. So that's what we're using to ensure that we're on track and they can measure their growth themselves as well.
Yes.
Okay. Fantastic.
And in addition, Board Member Tapia Romero, I think it's important to note that there is a big shift. You know, I wish we could say, oh, in a year, every child grew 10%, but that's unrealistic. And if there was one specific strategy that worked with everybody, then schools across the country would obviously be using that. And when we look at our students with disabilities, particularly behind many of those students is an IEP that has specific math goals. And I do worry sometimes on us not looking at how the students with disabilities are meeting their math goals, because we're worried about, like, are they progressing on here? Because being flat is not necessarily a bad thing for our students if we're seeing that they all have these IEPs behind it, and are we making progress on those individual goals? The fact that Mr. Sanchez is at the table, very excited to be here tonight, is speaking to how, as a system, we're aligning the accountability, because as you've heard, his role has been supervising principals. It still is supervising principals, but we've seen as a district, there was a disconnect between leading the work of this goal. And I think Board Member Jackson has asked this in a question one time that made me think, like, wait, are we misaligned here? And that's what Dr. Gonzalez is saying too, is these conversations really do help us. And like, how are we really focused on our strategies? And so the accountability now with Mr. Sanchez being able to coach principals specific to what the goals are really helps. He walks the halls of these schools in the classrooms every day. He can identify, we have two middle school principals here, well, one who has been moved into a assistant superintendent position, who have both made incredible gains at their school. And to us, it's like, we need to celebrate them and hear what are those stories. And nobody knows those stories more besides them and their teachers than Mr. Sanchez and the supervisors of these principals. And that's really where we're digging into the accountability and the celebrations of what's happening in the schools. Thank you.
Thank you for that. We've had a chance to go through and have every board member ask a question, so I'll just open the floor broadly to see if there are any other board members, or if there are any board members who have any additional SMART questions for the administration.
I do.
Member Dominguez.
It's a follow-up to the explanation you just provided, Superintendent Blakey. Flat doesn't mean no growth per IEP. And so help me understand that as a just help us understand that. Us, and when I say us, me in communion with constituents.
So for our students with disabilities, if they have an IEP, that I'm looking at Ms. Reiser in the hopes that maybe she'll look up and say, like, thank you. If they have an IEP that has specific goals for math and what their progress are and what their accommodations are to meet their goals in math, they might not have a goal that is saying that they have to be at 20.4% proficient. Their goal might be not even on this, or it might be that their goal is to get to 3% proficiency. No, not unless you feel like you need to, and then I'll get really scared that I'm answering it wrong. Just kidding. But so the progress towards the goals for the students with disabilities who have a math exceptionality, those IEPs are really what's measuring their progress. We're looking at this as a cohort of students. Behind these numbers are individuals. But that's why this data is really like a larger data set where we're looking at students holistically. A classroom teacher would look at this data much differently. They're going to look at just their class. How is Gabriella progressing? Is this progress for her based on where I know she needs to be? Whereas this is very high level data where we're looking, is the system as a whole moving forward?
So knowing that, then what information do we need then to be able to ask better questions about our special ed, our children with disabilities population? Because that gets more nuanced. So,
because yes, behind these children with disabilities, several of them, many of them have a disability in math. And so it is like paring it down, it makes it a little bit difficult to really look at the numbers if you're going to look at just like math. We see the same thing with reading with students with disability, because for some of our students, that is measuring what their disability is.
So again, like, what's the approach that makes it more, I'm just trying to be more effective about how we ask questions about children with disabilities.
I would say that from my vantage point, it's why if we're looking at the data as a whole, the goals were made with the groups all in one group, right?
Correct.
So if we look at it and we pull them out, then that's going to give us very different goals to look at. That's where you would look at students with disabilities as a different goal per that subgroup than if you're looking at as a whole, because the idea behind this because these goals were developed with all of the groups together as a subset. If you pull them out, then it really, students with disabilities needs its own way of looking at the data. Not if you're looking at this is looking at it very high level broadly with all the groups together.
Precisely, but we need to do justice to that population in our conversations here. And so what is, again, what is going to be the approach to better monitor students with disabilities? And you don't have to answer that now, but I think that's a critical question for us to grapple with.
So Member Dominguez, sorry, Member Jackson, I'll turn to you in a minute, but I just want to clarify that the purpose of our monitoring conversations is to focus on the overall performance of the school system. And so granted, obviously students with disabilities are a part of that system. It's important to understand how they're progressing, but we have to make sure that we are staying at the high strategic level and not diving into specific instructional shifts, pedagogical methods, selection of materials, any of those types of things as it relates to that or data. So that said, I think this would be a good question to ask our coach if we had one around how do we ask questions about particular student groups. But since we don't, for now, I think that's something for all of us to help think through. How do we make sure that we're getting to that level of understanding for that specific student group, given that it is part of the Ozzie Martinez population, as we are trying to stay at the strategic level focused on overall system performance.
I don't disagree with you, but I think we need to have an understanding about how we're missing information so that we can ask. I want to ask strategic questions about that population. Just because we disaggregate does not mean that we don't ask strategic questions about the disaggregated populations. So that's all I'm asking for.
Member Jackson?
So if I may, I was going to say that same thing. I wasn't going to use as big of words as you said, like pedagogical and stuff like that. But what I was gonna say is I think we are needing to make sure that we stay at a governance level. I agree that you want to ask strategic questions, but I think some of those questions that have been elucidated today could be asked in technical questions, especially now that you know that there are potential subgroups within special education. But again, those are very specific to IEPs. That is like in the weeds down under the ground. That probably also has legal barriers around it as to how much we are allowed to know. So I think if in order to help you frame a strategic question, those might be more technical or tactical questions that can be asked beforehand. Once you receive that information, that might help you to better frame your strategic question. But we need to be very careful about giving advice or directing, the superintendent and her staff on how the information is provided to us.
Thank you, Member Jackson. So I'll turn to Member Tomorito and then we'll go ahead and see if there are any other strategic questions so we can move on in the agenda.
I just want to clarify, I think many times when we look at special education predominantly, there are layers. And I think Board Member Dominguez was just asking a question on how that works. I don't think she was stating a comment or trying to get into the weeds. But I would think that also understanding special education would be helpful and how IEPs work and the process and how that relates to goals. And not only goals within IEP, but also our goals as a district. So I think in clarifying that, I would think, I've never seen anybody do a presentation on special ed because I did want that earlier. But I also know that it gets entangled because there are misunderstandings about how it works. And specifically when Gail Stewart made that comment, it's a deeper issue. That one I stated later on, I will ask the question to, but I think we don't know the layers of what goes into special ed and also what's required in an IEP and looking at curriculum and all of those things. But I think there just needs to be an understanding of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Tomorito. Are there any additional SMART questions for the administration before we move on to accepting the report? All right. So I'd like to thank you, board members, for this productive conversation, and also thank you to the administration for the report, for your work on math improvement, and also for the continuous improvement that has been shown in the reports. It's been really fun to watch them get more in depth and detailed and tied, I think, to the work that the community is most interested in around goals. Math goal in particular. So now we need to vote on whether or not we will accept this monitoring report. And as a point of clarity, we're voting to accept this report as a formal acknowledgement that we had a satisfactory conversation with the superintendent. Had a satisfactory conversation with the superintendent and have a deeper understanding of how the current reality for students lined up with their vision for them. In order to accept, we must answer yes to the following questions. 1, does the reality of this report meet our vision for the goal? 2, is there growth toward the vision? 3, is there a strategy and plan sufficient to cause growth toward the vision? If the answer to all 3 is yes, then the board can accept the monitoring report, confident that data is accurate and that the superintendent is performing. At this point, I believe we're ready to entertain a motion to accept this monitoring report.
I will move that we accept the progress monitoring reports for interims goals 2.1 and 2.2 math proficiency.
This is Crystal, second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Can we please have a roll call vote?
Josefina Dominguez,
Yes.
Crystal Tapia Romero,
Yes.
Heather Benavides.
Yes.
Courtney Jackson.
Yes.
Ronaldo Tomorito.
Yes.
Danelle Astorga,
Yes.
Daniel Gonzalez.
Yes, and so that motion carries. Thank you again for the work. Our next item is a discussion on board time use evaluation. So we are looking at our board's time use between the for quarter 2, which included the months of April, May, and June. So during this 3-month period, the board used 870 minutes of board authorized public meeting time. Of this time, April was 328 minutes, with 156 of that being coded as student outcomes focused. And so for April, the percentage of student outcomes focused time was 48%. So nearing that 50% in April. So that was exciting. May, we had 214 total minutes. If that's low, it's because we canceled one of our meetings for graduation week. Of that, 63 of those minutes were coded as student outcomes focused. And so for May, the percentage of student outcomes focused time was 29%. In June, we had 328 board authorized public meeting minutes. 136 of those minutes were student outcomes focused for 41%. This included in this add 2 community outreach and engagement committee meetings that were board authorized and not required by law. Did I say that right? 2 be a week? Yes. Ad hoc committees. So this included the ad hoc committee on the board guardrails, the ad hoc committee on community engagement, the ad hoc committee on new board member onboarding, as well as the community engagement and outreach event with the New Mexico United. Are there any questions about this data? All right, seeing none, we will move on to agenda item 5.3, which is to consider adoption of the APS Board of Education Student Outcomes Focused Governance Self-Evaluation for year 3, quarter 3. Student outcomes focused governance, again, is a framework that is designed to drive the board's ability to function most effectively to deliver on our collective promise to improve student outcomes. This is the process that we're going to go through of calibration and recalibration that allows us to align and realign our governing behaviors with those that research shows are most effective in creating the context for improving student outcomes. Our board has also adopted a policy 4B on board accountability that says that our board will monitor its process and performance. By regularly conducting formative self-evaluations along with an annual summative self-evaluation using a research-based self-evaluation instrument. So board members have been asked to individually complete the self-evaluation form for our board actions from this last quarter. Board members have done this and have submitted their results to the board office for tonight's discussion. So before we proceed, are there any questions about the process to date? All right, then I will review the results for each of the 6 competencies of the student outcomes focused governance self-evaluation. I'll share our collective scores for each competency, and then we'll go through and we'll have discussion. So we received scores from 4 board members, and the total range, the range that we had for this quarter was 57 to 58. So this is the closest we've been in alignment, the smallest range, the smallest difference that we've had. So I'm excited about that because I think maybe it saves time on the recalibration, but we'll see. Across each competency, there were 4 where members were all agreed. And so there was only one area of discrepancy that we'll dive into. So I'm going to go through. The first area is vision and goals. Collectively, board members rated us as having achieved a 35. So 35 is the consensus on the number of points and focus for that. Values and guardrails. Collectively, board members rated us as having achieved a 10. So 10 is the consensus number for points for values and guardrails. For monitoring and accountability, again, collectively, board members rated us as having achieved a 10 as the consensus on the number of points and focus level. So 10 for monitoring and accountability. For communication and collaboration, collectively, board members rated us as having achieved a 1 as the consensus score, as the consensus number of points and focus level. So a 1 for communication and collaboration. And then under unity and trust, this is the area where there was some disagreement. Individually, board members rated us as having achieved either a 1 or a 0, with the consensus being as a 1 as the number of points and focus level. So we will say 1 for unity and trust, but I will also open up this one for anyone who had evidence for supporting your position of a score other than 1 on unity and trust.
Board President Gonzalez, I have a comment.
Yes, Member Benavides.
I scored us a 0. And it was based on poor attendance by board members for this quarter. And so if I'm understanding the criteria that we're evaluating ourselves for unity and trust, the first column says we're not student outcomes focused, we get a 0. If any of the following are true, the board has not adopted goals, adopted policies, any board member voted on an item on which they had a conflict of interest. Board members serve on committees formed by the superintendent or staff without approval. And then approaching student outcomes focus, which would get us a 1, no items from the not student outcomes focus column, which we got through the 0 column. And the first one is attendance at all regularly scheduled board meetings was over 80% during the previous 3-month period, which it was not. And so I think that we stay at 0.
All right. Are there responses to that?
I
Do
guess,
you-
oh, go ahead.
Member Tapia.
A clarifying question on that, like, I would question if the leave of absence from board member Astorga is being considered, because that was something that was, I don't hold that against us. But I don't know how the whole board feels with that. So that's why I rated it the way I did, because I didn't.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, no, I'm saying, yes, I agree with you. That's why I rated it that way. So I'll turn to the rest of the board also for other feedback on. And again, this is for us to determine and for us to reach consensus on. So we can say it's a 0 because we didn't have 80%, or we can say we had one member on maternity leave and so that doesn't count. And so we had 80%. So just open it up to the group to see how people want to clarify that, how folks feel. Thank you, Member Benavides, for the clarification.
Well, I have a follow-up question regarding the leave. And just to be very clear, I'm not picking on any one board member, but I do understand that that leave was requested and I'm assuming granted. But during that period, this board member did attend one meeting. So was she on leave or not?
So I'll respond to that, and that there is not actual leave for elected members. So she wasn't able to request a leave because it doesn't exist because we're not paid personnel.
Okay.
And so she indicated that these were the meetings that she was going to miss and this is how she's going to participate. And we said, great. So there is no formal leave. So again, there's no policy on it. There's no state policy. She's not personnel. So we use the term leave very loosely.
Right. No, I understand that. And I don't think that that's the question here. I think should we, because the person did attend one meeting, which I would think kind of breaks up the time in which she was out, do we give credit to it or not? It's just, I'm curious about, are we going to keep kind of moving the goalposts?
I don't think we should see this. I'm sorry. May I?
Member Dominguez, go ahead.
I don't see this as a punitive vote. It's a statement of fact that we didn't have 80%, and it's for good reason. But the final result is that we don't have 80%, and that's not a negative for anyone. It's just that's just the way it fell this time around. I'm sure it'll pick up next time.
And I understand, like, your question there, and I have no problem whatever way we choose to score it with this, if it's a 0. My explanation was that's the reason why I gave it at least a 1, but I fully understand with what you're saying and keeping consistent and accurate with what it actually states. I understand.
Yeah, and I'll just speak as a woman, as a mom, as a working mom, as an all-female board, and as a board that has our own authority to determine how we handle maternity leave, in quotes, since it's not something that's available to our board members. I think the flexibility, the grace, the acknowledgement that yes, women give birth and need to go and do that away from public life and away from the dais is important for us to acknowledge. And, in 2025, the fact that you can be an elected member and not have an opportunity to have formal leave is, I think problematic. And if anyone from the legislature is listening, I would encourage you to visit that as a member of policy. But I think just given where we're at and given the very unique circumstances of that, the absence that we had from Member Astorga in particular, that's why I scored it as a 1. I felt like maternity leave wasn't something that we would count, so to speak, as an absence. So sharing my perspective, we've heard from members Dominguez, Tapia, and Benavides. It looks like Member Tomorito wants to get in. And so I'll also open it up to Member Tomorito, Member Astorga, if you're would like to speak up as well, and Member Jackson, if there's anything you'd like to share, and then we can decide on this one and move on.
I think based on evaluation, I think we have to just state the truth. You know, she wasn't here. But I'm not trying to also ding her for anything, but it's just part of what our evaluation is stating right now. And I don't think we should go on predictions or what ifs. I just think that we have to just state what is the truth and formalize it, and we need to go on. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Tomorito. Member Jackson or Member Astorga, was there anything else you wanted to contribute?
I'm watching to see if she's coming on. I think that gosh, I hate having this conversation with her not here, even if she's listening. I mean, I think when you're on maternity leave, when you're out, it's just different. I understand the words. I was comfortable with her being out and then judging it based on 6, you know, 5 out of 6 were here, 4 out of 6 were here. I'm comfortable leaving it as a 1 because being a young mom, having a young baby at home, you just never know. Are you going to be able to show up or are you not? And so I think the fact that she said she would be out and was able to pop in when she could is a testament to her commitment to her elected office. And I appreciate that she shows up when she can. And I'm comfortable leaving it at a 1, but I'll go with consensus.
All right. Thank you, Member Jackson. This is one where I'm not sure that we do have consensus, so we're kind of going between a 0 and a 1. If I were to count, it does seem as that we potentially have 4 who think it's the 1 and 0 who think it should, I'm sorry, 3 members who think it would be the 0. And so with that in mind, and acknowledging of the scores that were submitted. So we had 4 scores submitted. Of the 4 that were submitted, 3 people ranked it as a 1 and 1 person ranked it as a 0. So it was a 1 as consensus in what was submitted. So I'd propose that we move ahead with the 1 for unity and trust. Member Benavides?
Sure. I'm totally fine with that. I think that it's very important that we stay true to the data and to the facts. And I also would say that in the event this happens again, that we understand the criteria. I did not realize that as a board, we were supposed to, essentially, we were a board of 6, not 7 during this time. And so had I known that, I might have scored differently.
Thank you. Member Tomorito.
I just want to clarify. I know that the scores were submitted, but I also just want to state that there is a consensus here permanently, not based on what was written prior to, that we need to also reflect that those who did state the 0, but also that we're doing this in public and we're not just, the public doesn't have, can't review those scores that were submitted to you. So I think that clarifying that and not initiating that based on those prior scores, that is the set all or be all to why we're putting 1. I'm just trying to, the prior, when you got the comments from other board members prior to this, that when that response was given and it was given off the dais, I think that now that we are currently bringing this up to a vote, that should be the vote and not what was given prior to this meeting. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you, Member Tomorito. So we will move ahead with a consensus of 1 for unity and trust. For continuous improvement, collectively, board members rated us as having achieved a 1 as the consensus on the number of points and focus levels for continuous improvement. So a 1 for continuous improvement. And so across all of the criteria, that gives us a total of 58 from the last quarter. Now we need to set our goal for the next quarter, and I'd like to hear from members of the board what you believe is possible by our next self-evaluation in the next quarter. So who would like to share their thoughts first?
I don't mind. I could jump in.
Thank you, Member Tapia-Romero.
So even reflecting back up from our last quarter scores versus this quarter, we stayed exactly the same. We were consistent. We had a next quarter goal of 72 anticipated for this particular evaluation, which we fell short. So I would like us to still stay on track of what we aimed for at our last quarter, to still be 72, for that being a goal, because there are, I just read it, there's one that we could actually take up significant points. Fairly easy.
Communication and collaboration would go to a 5 if we limit board meeting number and length.
Wow.
I'm going to see that tonight.
So, but yeah, I'll propose for it to be what we had suggested for our last one, because I think
72.
yes.
Right. Other suggestions, comments?
I have a quick clarifying question.
Yeah, Member Benavides.
For the next quarter, will we be basing our attendance on a board of 6 or 7?
That's up for us to discuss, but I will say the maternity leave for Member Astorga was set up in a way that she was returning virtual in July and then in person in August. So we're anticipating having her here for the next time going forward.
Okay, and just to be clear, I'm not picking on one board member. I just want to know what the criteria is that we're measuring. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any other reactions to the proposed 72 as a goal for the next quarter? Member Jackson.
I'm thinking, if I'm counting correctly, this went through, we'll have July, August, September, right? Is the next. Okay, well then never mind. If we were going to October, I was going to say we might be able to jump to 20 with the monitoring accountability, because we will have done the annual superintendent evaluation. But I guess that's because that's in October. So next time we'll jump to 20.
And I'm sorry, what focus level was that?
So under monitoring and accountability, we would move from approaching to meeting, but I have my dates off, so I retract.
Okay. So currently we're at a 10. And so do you think, Member Jackson, if I'm hearing you correctly, we'll stay at a 10?
For the next 3, yeah, for the next quarter, we will, because we will not have been able to say we did the most recent annual superintendent evaluation.
Okay, in which case our goal would be a 62 for the next quarter. So how do people feel about that?
Well, darn it, Courtney.
I'm sorry.
So if I summarize, we would stay as a 35 on vision and goals. For values and guardrails, we're at a 10 and we would stay at a 10. For monitoring and accountability, we're at a 10 and we would stay at a 10 for the reason that Courtney Jackson just mentioned. For communication and collaboration, Member Tapia Romero and we had thought that we would gain points for limiting our board meetings and numbers. That would move us up to 5. Do we think we are going to be able to limit the number of board meetings and the length? So not have any board meetings over 3 hours in July, August, and September.
We can try tonight, but I don't think we're on track for that.
Darn, we're not moving then.
So that's fine. So we would put that at 50. I'm sorry, we would keep that one at 1 and we would set our goal for the next quarter as staying solid at 58.
Yeah.
I am seeing nodding.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So at this time, our goal for next quarter is 58. And so at this time, I'll entertain a motion in consideration of our quarterly self-evaluation. And so the motion should say, I move we accept our quarterly self-evaluation score of 58 points on the Student Outcomes Focused Governance Self-Evaluation Instrument.
I move we accept our quarterly self-evaluation score of 58 points on the Student Outcomes Focused Governance Self-Evaluation Instrument. This is Board Member Jackson.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
This is Board Member Tapia Romero. I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? All right, Dr. Albright, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Josefina Dominguez,
I'll abstain.
Crystal Tapia Romero,
Yes.
Heather Benavides.
Yes.
Courtney Jackson.
Yes.
Ronaldo Tom Morito,
Yes.
Danella Starga,
Yes.
Danielle Gonzalez.
Yes, so that motion carries. Our next item is agenda item 5.4, discussion on the evaluation of the previous student outcomes focused governance vendor in preparation for establishing criteria for a new vendor. So I want to acknowledge that part of this process has already taken place offline. Members received a survey asking for their feedback on the previous vendor and services. And that feedback was provided to all of the members. And so members have had an opportunity to review that feedback, to review the summary of board member survey responses. And so now have an opportunity to discuss themes, implications, reflections, and takeaways. There was a request from board members to have time to reflect on what others said. So we've had others' answers in our inboxes for 2 weeks. And so we've had ample time to reflect on what others have said. And so we'll just go down the line and allow everyone an opportunity to share any other reflection or thoughts on services from the previous vendor. I want to remind us that we are talking about the services that we received. We're talking about the vendor and the contractor, not about the individual. So the purpose of this exercise is not to evaluate a staff person of another organization. It's simply to share feedback and evaluation around the services that we received. And the purpose of this is to be forward focused, future focused, so we can use those insights that we glean from that process to be able to determine criteria to evaluate a new vendor for coaching support for the board. And so to enable this process to go smoothly, I'm going to ask that each member spend just 2 minutes sharing their reflections, their feedback, their observations, their takeaways, their themes, their implications about the previous vendor. And so, Mr. Gonzalez, are you able to show a timer, or should I just run one from up here?
President Gonzalez, I can do a 2-minute timer for you.
Excellent, thank you. And so, Mr. Gonzalez, when you have that ready, then we will begin. And as I said, we'll just go down the line. And so I'll start with member Dominguez.
So I'll just note that first, beginning with the contract, contracts that impact the work of the board or governance team must be approved in public and must have a start and end time, period. Any extensions must be approved in public meeting by the entire board. And so in terms of process, we need to honor that. And that was a takeaway from the workshops that board member Tom Morito and I attended this last week in Cloudcroft at the Leadership Retreat, sponsored by the New Mexico School Board Association. And those were led by lawyers, 2 law firms that are listed as vendors here. So take away from that. Contracts must have intermediate markers or moments built in to reevaluate and reflect on the work completed up to that point, to rethink the path ahead, to adjust deliverables. All must happen in a public meeting. And finally, I think the vendor failed terribly on bringing consensus and unity and trust to this board. They did a great job at getting us started with progress monitoring, and that work is up to us to do, not anybody else, and we're doing it. The vendors were never intended to go on and on and on indefinitely. Secondly, I would argue that the vendors did harm between board relationships and certainly with the community. So I think we need to consider all that.
Thank you, Member Dominguez. Member Tapia Romero.
Thank you. My experience with working with our previous or current vendor was actually favorable. I felt like they were always accessible to answer any questions that I had, whether it was direct coaching during an actual board meeting or follow-up information that we needed outside of board meetings. They always made themselves available to do extra training, and if there was any type of confusion or we needed clarification as to what direction we were going to ensure that we were keeping the main thing, which is student outcomes. Because prior to us bringing on this vendor, we were very, very distracted. We would get involved in a lot of conversations that were things that we had no business making decisions on. And we spent a lot of our time like a hamster wheel. We worked our tail off, but we got nowhere. And bringing this particular vendor on, I really felt like it gave us a sense of direction and guidance, and it kept us focused. The hard part of that is that it also kept us accountable, and it kept us accountable for some bad behaviors that we had in the past or bad habits that derailed us from making the best choices. So it was uncomfortable at times to be able to, you have to be called out on, making sure we're doing what it is we are called to do. But overall, my experience was very, very favorable. I enjoyed working with them. I enjoyed having an expert on our team. I love that they had also had experience working with large school districts like ours, because that is something we had to take into consideration in being able to make the right decisions. And I think they were always available to train and retrain to the point where I didn't want to retrain anymore because I felt like I was not using my time wisely and I had already had those trainings. But again, that's me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Member Benavides.
Thank you, President Gonzalez. Okay, so for the Council of Great City Schools and the coaching provided, the pros for me, great training. I really enjoyed it. They encourage self-reflection, which I appreciated, and the coaches were always available to us. They really were, and that was very helpful. Some cons, some of the demands for self-reflection were very heavy-handed, to the point that it seemed almost insulting to the people in the training. There was a lack of transparency, especially where the contract is concerned. And overall, I feel like there was a failure to encourage a culture of teamwork and instead encourage a culture of kind of a divide and conquer. And finally, I asked for data for other school districts using the SOFG and Council of Great City Schools coaches to compare it to our results. To see if this is a model that does in fact work, and it was never provided. And so that's a big point of contention for me, but it was a positive experience, but I understand now we're ready to move on. So thank you.
Thank you, Member Benavides. Member Jackson.
Thank you. I agree with some of the statements. I really appreciated that they were always available and were flexible with their time. I did spend a fun Friday evening over a glass of wine and Zoom with some of our coaches from Council of Great City Schools, just so that I could better understand the process and to help get better for my own skills, habits, and mindsets to make sure that I was focusing on what I needed to be focusing on. So I really appreciated that. I appreciated their responsiveness as well. I could always reach out and get a response phone call. And I think most importantly for me, what they helped to provide to follow up with what Board Member Tapia Romero was saying, I think that they absolutely brought us a clarity to our work. They helped us to focus on what was really the work of the board and why we're here, why APS exists, why school boards exist. And so they brought clarity. I believe that they brought us a consistency. I think it was challenging, but I'm not here to have my ego stroked. I'm here to make sure that the work that I am doing from the dais and when I'm out in the community is what is focusing on our students. And I think that they helped us to maintain a focus And I think that if today's progress monitoring report is any indication of it, as well as the progress monitoring report that we were supposed to hear on June 18th, but I think we'll hear in the future, it is delivering results for our students. And so having that focus, having consistency, having challenging yet effective coaching conversations is what is, it's about the translation from what I have to do into what is working for our students, and that is meeting our goals.
Thank you, Member Jackson. Member Tomorito.
When I first came on, I read the book Great on Their Behalf, and found throughout my duration of working with the Council of Great City Schools that they lacked the deliverables within that book. And it was sorry to see that so many things were not addressed, especially when it came to our frustrations. They did lack creating unity on this board. Instead, it was more of dividing. The coaches for me did not work. I know that Ashley tried really hard to get me on board, but her examples were just not good enough. Okay, I'm sorry. So then also didn't like that their lack of trying to include tribes. They didn't follow through on that, and specifically, so that was a big misnomer for me. Also, when I asked questions about the audit on special education, that was never addressed by the council. Mr. Craybill was, the director and those who were involved, sometimes when you required personal engagement, that was never followed through. I also felt that there was confusion when it came to community engagement and also student-focused governance, that we had one idea, but it was never seriously addressed. So I only took one class, and it was on tactical and strategic questions. Other than that, I felt that in many times, because of not including tribes, I just felt like I was not included. That's it.
Thank you, Member Tomorito. Member Astorga, are you in a place where you can answer this question?
Yes, thank you. I'll just echo what a lot of you have already said, the flexibility, the availability of the coaches. I also really enjoyed the trainings. I did wish that they were a little bit longer and not so stuck on the time constraint that we have as board members, so that we can get more in-depth conversations in those trainings. But yeah, I think that I had a really great experience with the coaches. The only thing that I would want a little bit more from a coach, and I'll get in this when we talk about the RFP, is I had a question throughout my time as a new board member about advocating for my constituents in this model that I felt was always kind of just dismissed or brought on between this conversation of like owners versus the managers. So just diving into that a little bit more and helping guide me on that. I also just wanted to acknowledge something that like my constituents have been telling me, which I agree with, is that this vendor is very corporate and a corporate model. So something that a lot of us are not used to. So that also caused a little bit of, difference in how I related to the vendor, because I do come from a different style of working, so more community-based versus more corporate-based. So that was challenging for me. But the overall experience was positive.
Great, thank you, Member Astorga. So I will go next and say, I think the thing that I appreciated most about our previous vendor was their flexibility and time, just the availability. I think the fact that we were able to have a coach observe our meetings, even the ones that ran late and long, and be available for live coaching, to send emails and texts during the meetings to support all of us, I found really helpful. So just that availability, I think, was really important. The responsiveness and just flexibility with time is also important. As board members, some of us have other jobs, and makes it difficult to be available for meetings during the day. And so I found the coaches that we worked with, the previous vendor to be available and had a flexible schedule. I really appreciated that our previous vendor had a strong understanding and a clear grasp of the definition of student outcomes focused governance, a clear understanding of the research behind student outcomes focused governance, a clear understanding of the research behind what makes school boards effective and what gets in the way, but also connections to other school boards, urban school boards, large district school boards all across the country to be able to share models and examples, but also to make connections. So I was able to connect to my peers across the country at a variety of different points, either as a policy chair, as a member, or as the board chair to get advice and feedback from people in the same position who are also doing student outcomes focused governance and able to speak to how they were addressing challenges. So those connections that our previous vendor brought were very helpful. I also really appreciate the direct and honest feedback offered by all of our coaches, even when I didn't want to receive it, because it did push me to change my behavior. All right. So with that, we will go ahead and move forward to our next agenda item, which is agenda item 5.5. And I just want to see, we've been going for almost 2.5 hours, and I know we have people with a variety of needs. Does this feel like a good time for a brief recess? Because I think the next agenda item might be longer.
Yes, that works.
Yes, okay. So we will take a brief recess and come back in 5 to 10 minutes when we come back. Thank you.
And try my cookie.
But I also appreciative, all those kids are on either ability or standard. So it's one of those things that vary, how many are on the standard, where some of these goals may work. But then the ability is totally different. Yeah.
Board President Gonzalez, we are at 10 minutes since our break. Would you like to get started again?
I believe we are ready to get started. We're all back. Actually, I can't see. Is Member Astorga? Member Astorga, are you back and ready?
She is still logged in.
Yes, I am.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, we are ready.
We are streaming, Board President.
Thank you. Our next item is agenda item 5.5, which is a discussion to establish criteria for a new vendor to provide services to support the board's implementation of the student outcomes focused governance. For this area of the discussion, for this component of the agenda, we're going to use a process called nominal group technique, which is just a fancy way of saying a process for group facilitated consensus building. I know many of us have had an opportunity to reflect on criteria, to think of what we want. And we've also, some of us have heard from our constituents. And so this is an opportunity. We've had some time to reflect. We've had some pre-work where members were asked to spend some time thinking about what are the criteria that you would like to include in the request for proposals for a new vendor to support the board's implementation of our governance model, student outcomes focused governance. So you had an opportunity to think of that. And so I'm going to walk us through the process here. So if you have notes somewhere around what you have developed as what you think are the important criteria, this is the time to get those out. The process is going to be that we'll go down the line and we'll have each member state one criteria, one area that they think is important to be included in the request for proposals. Member Benavides is going to act as our scribe. And so if you're wondering why there's been this flip chart up behind us for the whole meeting, that is why. So she's going to capture people's suggestions. And so we'll do 3 full rounds. So everyone will have an opportunity to share 3 ideas. And then we will pause and we will check only for clarification. It's not an opportunity to argue or debate or dialogue or discuss the ideas. It's an opportunity to seek clarification. It's also an opportunity at that point to potentially consolidate. So we may say, I think that idea number 1, and we should probably number them, and idea number 8 seem very similar. Member A, you propose this. Member B, you propose that. Do you think they're similar? Can we consolidate them? If both members agree, we'll consolidate them.
Similar how we did superintendent.
It's the exact same process that we use to develop the job description for our superintendent search process. Exact same thing. And so then after that, once we have the ideas, we'll go back through and we will allow board members 4 votes. And so you'll have 4 choices on the list that you can identify. Member Benavides acting as our scribe will put hash marks for those votes. And then we'll see essentially what are the top agreed upon criteria that we want for the RFP for our vendor. I'm going to go ahead and start with Member Astorga with this one because I know she has other priorities this evening. And so Member Astorga, if you can go ahead and share with the board. Now I'm wondering if we should do your top 3 or go through. Yeah. Member Astorga, how much time do you think you have with us?
If I can just give all my 3, that would be great.
Okay. Is that okay with others if we kind of modify the process a little bit for that? Okay. Member Astorga is going to give her top 3 criteria.
Perfect. Thank you so much. First, I just wanted to acknowledge some of the conversations and questions that I've been hearing from the community. So there is a question about why we need coaches and this whole process. And it does stem from many organizations and companies being tied to privatization of education in a guise to better our schools or improving test scores. So I just wanted to respond to that and say that my reasoning for supporting coaching is because I don't see it as a negative if board members need coaching. I see it more as a mentorship or a guidance. So just as I've had community mentors and teachers have learning coaches, there's a space for improvement and guidance always. Another concern I've heard is still tied to the privatization of education issue. And it's a question around why do we rely so much on standardized test scores? So I want to just assure my constituents that I have always been opposed to standardized test scores as the only measure of success because of their historical foundation being tied to old IQ tests, which have been used to keep people of color out of higher education and towards military or work. And I wanted to remind community that the goals we have are ensuring our students are meeting reading and math proficiency, which means in order to see improvement in those outcomes, we are using the testing to stay on target. But that could be something that maybe Superintendent Blakey and her team can change, but we use the state and federal mandated testing. So that's just an important thing that I feel like was needed to say during this process that I've been getting from constituents. And my 3 recommendations are, first, to hire a local organization, either a statewide or regional one, because East Coast-based organizations don't fully understand our culture as a state sitting on tribal land, as well as our multiple languages that are within our constitution as a state. My second recommendation is an organization that has background in working with school boards and school districts with an intentional framework to do better for our students of color. So plus, I know this is kind of throwing a shot in the dark, but for me, a plus would be if they are based on an anti-racist or decolonial framework. My third recommendation is an organization that has a strategy around what it looks like for school board members to be active advocates in their for their constituents in collaboration with the superintendent and their team. So a local organization, an organization that has background in working intentionally to better outcomes for students of color, and an organization that has a strategy on what it means to be an active advocate. Thank you all.
Thank you, Member Astorga. So we are capturing those on the flip chart. Hopefully you can see it or are able to stick around enough to express your four votes, but if not, we know that you have other things you need to deal with. So thank you for that. So I'll go ahead and start at the end of the dais to my right with Member Dominguez, if you can share one of your criteria.
The process from beginning to end has got to be transparent and public. And so I want to know, I want the board to have membership on the committee. I want the full board to have say in the creation of a rubric, fielding applicants, the scoring, all that. I want all of that transparent. And I'm sorry, it's not just the board. We're a governance team. And so I think we need to be sure that we function as a governance team in all that process.
Thank you, Member Dominguez. Member Tapia Romero.
Thank you. So I'm looking for someone who has systems thinking. They're familiar how to work with a large district. They're a high-level coach. They must be able to see across all departments, initiatives, board priorities, and community needs. They can help the board recognize how decisions can ripple across the entire school and some of the I'm trying to say the word. Yes, thank you. Amongst staff and with our budget and outcomes overall, and just being able to guide us cohesively. So, but a systems thinking approach.
Thank you, Member Tapia Romero. Member Benavides, you can write yours down and then come to the mic and share it afterwards.
Doing one?
We're just doing one.
Just one?
Just
Okay,
one.
so, my top would be experience with SOFG.
Great, thank you. Member Jackson.
Okay, so my top is also experience with SOFG. So do I just?
You just say that, yeah.
Okay, all right, because I didn't know if it was already on the board, if I needed to go to my next one, but yes, experience with SOFG is my top.
Thank you. Member Tomorito.
A coach able to see our needs and provide the training necessary, the necessary training to pull us all together and keep us on board.
Say a coach who can assess our needs and provide training that encourages
Unity.
engagement.
Yeah, engagement. Yeah.
All right. And my top one is documented positive results from previous SOFG work. So a vendor who has proof that they have been effectively able to implement SOFG.
Positive results with SOFG.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you. We'll go back through. Member Dominguez, would you like to share your second, please?
Yes. We need somebody who is going to improve community/family and advocate outreach and engagement with our most vulnerable targeted populations per the disaggregated data.
Thank you.
Once again, do you need me to repeat? Heather?
I put improve family and community engagement outreach to vulnerable populations.
In the disaggregated populations.
Thank you, Member Dominguez. Member Tapia Romero.
I have that I'm looking for someone who can be neutral, but neutral with courage, if that makes sense. That they can remain neutral, but not passive. They can still challenge us and allow us to think differently. Not take sides, but challenge assumptions.
Thank you. Member Benavides, I think your second one is culture of teamwork. Culture of teamwork. That's okay. No, that's cool. Member Jackson.
My second is experience with large urban school districts similar to ours. APS is a big fish in a New Mexico pond, and our challenges are different than our challenges and our opportunities are different than the other school districts in New Mexico. So we need somebody who can bring us similar experience from other large urban school districts.
Thank you. Member Tomorito.
A coach who can team build, team mentor, and I forget the last one. Yeah, that's it. I'm just gonna say team mentoring and yeah.
Thank you. That's me. I would say availability, and it would be like the main thing that you can write, but flexible schedule, including out of regular work hours, but just availability that matches ours.
Flexibility.
That's perfect. Member Dominguez. We're starting the third round.
Well, I think we've got consensus already, or she mentioned unity. Did that come up already?
If you could just share your top three. So it's
Right,
intended
but I
to
want to make sure that
not
I
yet
know it.
foster consensus until we have everybody's top ideas on the table.
So I'm just checking in. So did we get that already? Ronaldo, I think, mentioned it. Demonstrates ethical practices, understands and consistently applies coaching ethics and standards.
Thank you. Member Tapia Romero.
Mine is around political and emotional intelligence, like ensuring that we can navigate interpersonal tensions. And how can we still maintain trust while always focusing on student outcomes, improving student outcomes?
Thank you.
Mine is experience with large districts.
Member Benavidez's third is experience with large districts. Member Jackson.
My third is a proven improvement in student outcomes. So an ability to prove that student outcomes focused governance actually leads to improved student outcomes. Because in the end, it really is our fundamental responsibility to the students and the families of the district to improve student outcomes. And that's what we're here for.
Thank you. Member Tomorito.
A coach who gives us, helps us to strengthen our ability to have student outcome focused governance, but sometimes I think that that could be the key point, but just to bring that along and to remember that we are different and what our strengths as a different community, board, and school district.
Thank you.
What do you mean by different, may I ask?
I'm sorry.
What do you mean by different?
Okay, our languages, our cultural, our population, our demographics, diversity.
Get cultural in there. Culturally different.
Celebrate diversity, culture, and then strengthen SOFG.
With all that in mind.
Yeah, that's all part of it.
Thank you, Member Tomorito. And so my third is that they have tools and templates already created, models, tools, and templates to provide that we can use and adapt. All right, so everyone has had a chance to go through with their three top ideas. There has been some duplication, which is good. And so we're gonna go now and I'm gonna ask, I'm gonna try to read them out so we can all hear them. And then we're gonna go back through the line and we're gonna have, I'm sorry, no, we're not gonna go back through the line. We're gonna have the conversation on clarification now and consolidation. Okay, so the first thing we had is that we hire someone local, that they have a background in DEI support to support our diverse students.
Strategy on active advocacy.
And they have a strategy related to active advocacy. Next, we have a transparent process. And then the print gets tiny. That they can improve family and community engagement and outreach to vulnerable populations, including the disaggregated populations, ethical practices and standards, systems thinking, large district experience, cohesive guidance and coaching, neutrality, neutral with courage, political and emotional intelligence. What's that word after trust? Before trust? Oh, they can maintain trust. They have experience with SOFG. They have a culture of teamwork, and they have large district experience. They have experience with SOFG. They have experience with large urban districts, and they have a proven improvement with SOFG outcomes. A coach who can assess our needs and provide training that encourages engagement, team building and mentoring, celebrating diversity, culture, strengths, along with the SOFG understanding. documented positive results with SOFG, availability and flexibility, and that they possess tools and templates as models that we can use. So are there any clarifying questions around anything that's up here? And the floor is just open for that.
I just want to.
Sorry, real quick. Member Tom Morito.
I forgot to put on there, just understanding the Martinez-Yazzie lawsuit. I think we don't do that enough. That's it.
So we will add that, understanding the Martinez-Yazzie lawsuit. Are there clarifying questions around what's up here? Member Dominguez.
Not a clarifying question, but clarifying statement or reiterating that this person has got to have some street cred with parents.
So I just want to clarify that we're not advocating for any particular criteria right now, because we do want to have equality of voice across all 7 of us. So all of us have had an opportunity to express what our top criteria are. We are working to clarify and see if there's any questions around anything or misunderstanding.
So, okay, I have a question about member Tom Morito. Could you read? No.
So just says, I'm sorry, you said yes.
We will eventually. No. Just keep going. This is a draft.
You're good.
Okay. So she says, coach, you can assess our needs and provide training that encourages engagement, team building, mentoring, celebrate diversity and culture while strengthening.
Temple, slow down. So what was the first one?
So just because member Benavides isn't at a mic, I'm sorry, coach who can assess our needs and provide training that encourages engagement.
So what do you mean by who can assess our needs?
I think many times, especially if you're looking at somebody to coach, you got to see the strengths and you got to also see the weaknesses in a board, and how do you pull that all together?
I like that clarity.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep.
You need that clarified.
Well, who can draw our
So
strengths?
I think it's coach who can assess our strengths and needs.
Yeah, that's
So add
Right,
strengths.
well, our strengths and weaknesses is what I heard, and then pull it all together. Strengths and weaknesses.
Other clarifying questions about what we have up here? All right, then we will move to consolidation. So we do have some ideas up here, some criteria that are repeated. And so that would be fantastic. Member Romero, can you just put that up there? Thank you. And so member Romero, if you can call out what you see as the duplications and then who said them, and we'll ask those members if it's okay to consolidate.
So experience with SOFG, I feel like that is.
Yeah, that's Jackson and Benavides and
Me.
well, mine was documented results.
But I think someone said SOF culturally different SOFG was.
But we're not changing, we're wanting just to consolidate the ones that are the same. And so since
So-
Jackson and Benavides both have experience with SOFG, we can consolidate that into one. Is that okay with Jackson and Benavides? Okay, so we can cross off one of the experiences with SOFG up here. So that when we vote, we're voting only on the one. Are there other things that are repeated? We need to keep one of the experiences up there. You crossed them both.
Sorry, I just write it on a new page.
Just write
as
it.
they get.
Okay.
Yeah, I think as they get.
Large district experience?
Large district experience was shared by Tapia Romero and Benavides
Me. Yeah, me too.
and Jackson. Experience with urban districts. So are we comfortable consolidating experience with large/urban districts? Okay, we'll consolidate that one. We can cross off the other two. Are there any other things that were repeated?
Yeah, like
So we have
culturally,
proven improvement with SOFG and documented, I don't know if that's the same, documented positive results with SOFG.
I think that's still the same.
And so that's me and Jackson. So would you be okay consolidating those into one?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll consolidate that. So we'll cross off one of those. Documented positive results with SOFG.
Consolidate that with SOFG experience.
Well, so there's a difference between experience and then positive results with. You can have experience and not have positive results. So remember, top of your mirror, are there any others that are?
Culture was huge. Martinez Yazzie, culture, culturally relevant, SOFG.
Celebrate diversity, that's culture, a background in DEI, bring your students.
So culture of teamwork, the way I took that and it helped me understand this, I understood this amongst each other.
Yeah,
not-
that's completely different.
Okay.
So do we want to consolidate background in DEI with, I think member Tomorito's around her second one? Her third one, celebrate diversity.
Strength and culture?
So member Tomorito, would you be okay with amending yours to add background in DEI? A coach who has a background in DEI and can
Martinez Yazzie.
Background in DEI, Martinez Yazzie, and what was the last, the
culture, diversity.
We're the only district to dealt with your Martinez Yazzie.
Yeah, we're the only.
So they have to work with us to have experience.
Or just
Well, we're not
understand,
deliberating.
but
We're
yeah.
just talking about whether we can amend
Okay, so
one.
it's the DEI.
Culture,
Martinez
diversity, and Martinez Yazzie. Background in.
And culture, isn't it the and culture? Diversity.
Culture, strength and SOFG and on us.
Oh,
Okay, but we want to do the DEI, did you say?
DEI and cultural awareness, cultural responsiveness. Yeah, so we can combine those. Member Tomorito, what wording do you think would be best for that consolidation? So we could say background in DEI and
Yazzie.
awareness of Martinez Yazzie.
Yeah. And the cultural of the community.
And the culture of our community. Okay. And so we can cross off the duplication that's up there. And then is there any other duplication?
So we have this where a coach can assess strengths and provide training that encourages engagement. I said something about like leading with courage, like neutrality with courage, and I don't know if that's.
Well, you suggested that, so you can weigh in as to whether, so I can signal what's happening next. So we're just consolidating so that we don't split votes, so to speak. So if there's experience with SOFG and experience with SOFG, people don't vote on one or the other, and then it divides it. So now we have it up here as once. We're going to take everything else that is also appearing once up there and move it over here. So if there's anything that is like too similar, that it's going to get split up with our votes and then not make it through because we all agree on it so much. That's what we're kind of trying to figure out if there's anything.
Build culture of teamwork.
And so that was Benavides and Tomorito. So would you two be comfortable with consolidating yours in a coach who brings a culture of teamwork?
I'll throw mine in there too, the political and emotional intelligence, mentoring trust.
Okay. So it's coach who brings a culture of teamwork and political and emotional intelligence. Okay, I think that's all that are super similar, but does anyone think there are any others that are so similar that they need to be consolidated?
I'm concerned about community engagement. I think that's got to be, we've had two weaknesses, I would argue.
So it is community engagement appearing multiple times on this list and we need to consolidate it into one is what I'm asking. Okay. Okay, so if it's only once, that's fine. It's still going to make it to our list. Okay, so now Member Benavides is going to transfer the remaining ones that didn't get crossed out or already added onto this main list. So hire someone local. You're going to add hire someone local, or the one she's checking. Strategy on active advocacy.
What does that mean?
That was Member Astorga speaking to sort of a corporate model versus a more community model. So someone who understands the role of advocacy.
Or, I don't know, like what does that mean?
Transparent process. Improve family/community outreach with a focus on vulnerable populations, including our disaggregated Martinez-Yazzie populations. And next is ethical practices/standards. Next is systems thinking. I don't know how teachers do this for hours and hours. Systems thinking. Cohesive guidance and coaching, or sorry, slash coaching. Cohesive guidance/coaching. Availability/flexibility. Member Tapia, I'm not seeing any red checks on the top right corner, so that we've already captured all those. Okay. And they possess tools/templates that we can use. All right, so the next stage in this process is now that everyone can see everything that is up here. We are going to go through, and each member is going to have essentially 4 hash marks. And we're going to share them out loud for the purpose of transparency instead of having people just go through and do their hash marks. And so we'll go ahead and start. I think Member Astorga is gone. Is that correct? Yeah. No?
Still technically on Zoom, but I don't know that she's.
Okay. Member Astorga, are you able to offer your 4 top votes across the list that we have on the screen? Okay, Member Dominguez, we'll turn to your top 4 votes on the list that's on the screen.
I need clarification. Do we have DEI and anti-racism under the same thing?
No one said anti-racism, so it's not on the list.
Somebody mentioned it. I think
Yeah, Astorga did.
So
So
you want to put DEI/anti-racism?
because I asked, is DEI the same as anti-racism? No, DEI is broader, a broader framework. So yes, it's part of.
Oh my.
So
just put like a hash mark for each one. It'll take, okay, so it doesn't need who the number is.
okay. So I'm sorry, I can't see from back there. So I've got to come up and- So choose 4.
While Member Dominguez is reading them, Member Tapia, are you ready? Okay, go ahead and say yours out loud, and then Member Benavides, you can tick them off.
SOFG experience with a large urban district, documented positive results with SOFG, systems thinking.
Thank you. Member Dominguez, are you ready to do your top four? Sorry, yeah, four. Transparency.
Definitely brings a culture. Yep.
Teamwork.
Improve family community.
Improve family and community outreach. Focused on vulnerable populations.
Remember advocacy. I wish she was here to clarify that. I think what she is.
I'm back to clarify if I can.
Thank you, Member Astorga. You have the floor. Go ahead. The question is for a clarification on what we captured as strategy on active advocacy.
Yes, so for that, I go back to how we can advocate for our constituents as elected officials. So what does that look like? How are we actively advocating or representing our community as elected officials?
Thank you.
So you want to choose that one?
Yep.
Okay.
All right, so that was the fourth vote for Member Dominguez. Member Benavides, if you can hash mark yours and share them, and I'll share them into the mic.
Okay, so SOFG experience.
SOFG experience. Experience with the large urban district.
Brings a culture of teamwork and has political and emotional intelligence.
Culture of teamwork, political and emotional intelligence.
And ethical processes and standards.
Ethical processes and standards. Thank you. Member Jackson.
SOFG experience with large urban districts, documented positive results with SOFG, and availability and flexibility.
Thank you. Member Tomorito, if you can share your top four. Four.
Ethical.
You did.
What is that? Processes?
Ethical processes and standards. Yep.
And then transparency process.
Transparent process.
Background in DOE and Martinez Yazzie. DEI. Yeah. So the Department of Energy. Yeah. Department of, yeah. And then the first one, SOFG experience.
Okay. Thank you, Member Tomorito. So for mine, I will say SOFG experience. Documented positive results with SOFG. Availability and flexibility. And experience with large urban districts.
You want to get Janelle's now?
Oh, Janelle, since you are back, thank you. Do you want to share your top four?
Yes, thank you. I'll do the DEI one. The advocacy. Yes. Transparent process and availability, flexibility.
So we have multiple that have, so we have one that has 5. So that will be one. We've got several that have 3. So we'll include 4. Sorry, I was agreeing with the point. So that will be one. So can you put maybe red checks next to those? So SOFG experience with large urban districts. Those are the top 2. And then we have several that were 3 vote getters. So if we can mark those ones. So that was documented positive results, transparent process, and availability and flexibility.
One of mine. Just to give a boost to background and, I mean.
So what I was going to say is that I don't think that we need to rule out the 2 vote getters. And so let's go ahead and include the 2 vote getters in the RFP as well, if that works with people. So those are the criteria that we have overall. Everything that has 2 hash marks or more. Does that work? All right. Thank you, Member Benavides. You are all done. Thank you for being a scribe and for supporting us through that process. Our next item is to consider approval of amendments to the student outcomes focused governance implementation timeline.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Yes. No. We need a motion to consider this agenda item, and then we'll go into just, are you asking clarifying about this?
This or about that?
Okay, I'm sorry. Go, yes, clarifying about this.
So what we put red checks marks, we're saying that is automatically being included in the RFP, or are we having any additional discussion on any of these?
So these are the things that we'll say will be included. So we'll write the RFP and say we're looking for a a vendor who can provide this stuff.
Okay. And then RFP will have like a scoring system, so based on how many points they get on that, because, okay.
So when will that happen? And will it be a full board discussion about the RFP?
We had agreed that the RFP will be issued on July 18th. So this is the full board discussion about the RFP.
Okay, so I'm going to propose that we wait the background in DEI or I want to wait culturally, anything that is culturally sensitive to this community.
Member Dominguez, I
proposing that.
understand you, and I share that perspective. The purpose of this protocol, though, was to make sure that no single one of us had was able to express a dominant view over the others. And so that's why we voted. And so what rose to the top rose to the top. And so we'll include all of these in there. We'll ask the prospective applicants to demonstrate how they meet these criteria, and then we'll evaluate them against it. We're not gonna, there's not weighting of any particular one higher than the other, because that would give unfair advantage or preference toward one board member versus others.
I guess I'm concerned that the previous vendor, that was exactly the problem with the previous vendor.
I hear you. And we had the conversation prior in the agenda, so we're moving on. We talked about the previous vendor already. And so we have our criteria. We're moving forward with that in our RFP. We've established the process. And so our next item is to consider approval of amendments to the student outcomes focused government's implementation timeline. And so for this one, is there a motion and a second to consider this agenda item?
I move we approve amendments to the student outcomes focused governance implementation.
Consider approval.
Oh, did I not say that? I'm sorry. I move that we consider approval of amendments to the student outcomes focused governance implementation timeline.
I'll second. This is Board Member Benavides.
Thank you. Do we have any proposed amendments to the student outcomes focused governance implementation timeline?
I have a list.
Member Dominguez, go ahead.
So first, top row column with the title owner. I believe it's the board who should be the owner, again, in an effort to promote transparency and full board participation. That's my suggestion. Listed, and it's listed, I believe, as unity and trust. But this quality doesn't reside in one person. It has to be the full board. Second.
So what we'll do is we'll go through each amendment individually. I do want to offer a clarification here. So my understanding of proposed implementation, of proposed changes to the implementation calendar is proposed amendments to the work that we're going to do. So the activities that are listed under description, these are the things that we would hire a coach to help us do. So that's what we're coming to the meeting with suggestions about. The format of the calendar, I'm sorry, of the timeline calendar document, we can certainly discuss and debate. We can remove owner, we could do whatever, but the purpose of this agenda item is to discuss changes to the specific activities in the timeline.
So starting with page 3, that's where we're at in the timeline. Because we've already completed everything else prior to that.
Are we looking at the completed timeline? Is that the?
We're not looking at the completed timeline. When we had the discussion in June, the discussion was, what will the coach help us implement? The response was what we've approved by vote to put in our implementation calendar. There was discussion around, well, we ought to be able to change the calendar. And so this is the current calendar. So this is the opportunity to change it, to propose amendments.
Okay, so I'm just going to throw out the ideas and you can decide whether or not it fits what you're proposing at this moment. I'd like to add tracking board members' time, where we're tracking staff time that appears somewhere several times. I'd like to add, let's track board time as well, board member time. And I'd like to see an addition of, is this a 2-year calendar?
So it ends September 2025. So what we had previously done is we had considered a proposed calendar with the Council of Great City Schools that extended into 2028. The board decided not to continue that work with the Council of Great City Schools. And so what we're left with is our current implementation calendar as previously approved. So this is what the work we are currently doing.
Okay, so. And so the amendment that I'm proposing is that we add tracking board member time. Another amendment that
we'll just, is it okay if we go amendment by amendment?
Okay, sure.
So Board Member Dominguez has proposed an amendment to track board member time. I also want to offer the clarification that the items that are in here are things that we have already decided as a board to do through policy in our governance manual. So the policy diet, 50% of our time, monthly check-ins with the board, all of these things are already integrated elsewhere in the governance manual. So we can certainly add something that says the coach will support the board in developing a process to track board member time. And you're proposing that we would do that by when?
Well, how soon can we get it started? I mean, I understand that this is the Council of Great City Schools timeline. I guess I'm suggesting that this is our timeline.
It is our timeline. It is not the Council of Great City Schools timeline. It's the timeline that we voted on.
Where do we see tracking staff time up here? I mean, we could start that. We could start tracking board time in a month or two.
But this ends in
proposing.
September. Why would you
So-
propose something a change for a month?
So you're proposing that we add in September a deliverable that we are establishing a process with our coach to track board member time.
Yes.
It ends in September.
Okay.
Well,
Can we,
but we're also in an RFP.
can we have a motion and a second to do that? And then we'll move to discussion. We'll vote on that sub-amendment, sub-motion to the prior motion, and then we'll move on to the next proposed amendment.
Or let me ask it this way. So that kind of a suggestion, and another suggestion would have been reflect a 2-year cycle to show transitions and plans for continuity of work every cycle. Those sorts of ideas are not within the parameters of what you're looking for. I don't want to waste time on suggesting.
The way I understood, sorry.
No, go. Member Top-Romero.
The way I understand this is we're voting specifically on what's left for the next 3 months. 2 months. 2 months we have left on this calendar. If you want to make any changes left to the remaining 2 months, because this has already been approved.
That is correct.
Okay, so at the end of 2 months, will we revisit this and have an opportunity to add?
That's a separate agenda.
That's the purpose of the new coaching contract.
So when we get a new coach, we will revisit the implementation timeline.
That was the original plan. So I'm looking back at the Board of Education meeting minutes that we just approved from June 4th and the discussion on this topic. So it does read that there is interest in revising the implementation calendar.
I guess I'm confused to what end if
Well, that's my,
board member Tapia Romero said we've only got a couple more months.
Right.
so if there are no proposed amendments, then
Well,
we
She's doing what you
can,
wanted to. You asked for this to be brought up, so she's honoring your request to be able to offer any edits and changes. She's literally doing what you've been asking for months. So, come on.
I think there's, well, come on, we're
like,
having a,
right, but
we're-
she's
we have a
actually
different
honoring
vision
your request.
and
okay, member Tapia-Romero.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Member Dominguez, go ahead.
I'm a bit confused about exactly what you're at. When you ask for amendments, I'm thinking it's a revisioning of what we're going to call an implementation timeline.
So-
And I thought that would be appropriate before we got a coach so that we put out the vision before the coach gets here. But I mean, I can write this up for a different time to save time.
We can certainly do that. So the conversation that we had on June 4th was that we were considering working with the Council of Great City Schools in the process of their contract, which ended on June 30th. And and this implementation calendar was going to end on September 2025. They had proposed as a part of their renewed contract, a new implementation calendar that extended into September. Actually, I don't know the month, but I extended into 2028 because it carried us through the process of resetting new 5-year goals. So that failed or didn't get considered. And so we're left with no new approved implementation calendar. So the implementation calendar in front of us is the calendar that we voted on. So Member Tapia Romero is correct that you expressed a desire to have a board conversation on the current implementation calendar. Because that was not the posted agenda item in the June 4th meeting, we had to put it on a future agenda. So this is it. And the material said, this is our opportunity to offer amendments to the current calendar.
So I guess I wasn't thinking about, I was talking about globally an implementation calendar, not necessarily the current. I'd like to see an expression. And so I don't need to add anything to the current. I want a revisioning of an implementation timeline that reflects more the work that's needed as I'm proposing it. So
yes, so
I don't need to make amendments to something that, yeah, the distinction is current versus global.
So we have a motion on the table. Dr. Albright, can you remind me who made the motion in the second?
Board Member Jackson made the motion and Benavides made the second.
Okay, so at this point, we can repeal that motion and then do a motion to postpone this agenda item. or that's an or we can move ahead with the conversation to propose amendments. So since we do have a motion on the table, we wouldn't necessarily need to vote on it because it was to consider approval of amendments and we don't have any amendments. So to the people who made the amendments, would you want to repeal or change, I'm sorry, the motion, would you want to repeal or change your motion?
I'm happy to withdraw the motion as the
Okay.
primary motion maker.
Okay, so if we withdraw the motion to consider approval of amendments to the implementation calendar, is there a new motion?
I will.
Would be to postpone.
Yeah, I will move to postpone approval of amendments to the student outcomes focused governance implementation timeline until a time or in the future.
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. The motion from Member Jackson to postpone approval of amendments to the student outcomes focused governance implementation timeline to a time in the future, and a second from Member Benavides. Any additional discussion? All right, Dr. Albright, can we have a roll call, please?
Josefina Dominguez,
Yes.
Crystal Tapia Romero,
Yes.
Heather Benavides.
Yes.
Courtney Jackson.
Yes.
Ronaldo Tomorito,
Yes.
Janelle Astorga, Daniel Gonzalez.
Yes, so that motion carries. We'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is our consent agenda. Is there a motion and a second for approval of consent agenda items 6.1 through 6.17?
I move that we approve consent agenda items 6.1 through 6.17. This is Board Member Benavides.
This is Crystal, a second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Dr. Albright, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Josefina Dominguez,
Yes.
Crystal Tapia Romero,
Yes.
Heather Benavides.
Yes.
Courtney Jackson.
Yes.
Ronaldo Tomorito.
Yes.
Janelle Astorga, Daniel Gonzalez.
Yes. Our next item is to consider approval of the recusal consent agenda, which is agenda item 7.1. Is there a motion and a second for that?
I move to approve the recusal consent agenda. This is Member Jackson.
This is Crystal, a second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Josefina Dominguez,
Yes.
Crystal Tapia Romero,
Yes.
Heather Benavides.
Yes.
Courtney Jackson.
Yes.
Ronaldo Tomorito.
Yes.
Janelle Astorga, Daniel Gonzalez.
Yes. So that motion carries. The next item on our agenda is agenda item 8.1. Consider approval of revisions to section 4D4 of the APS Board of Education Governance Manual. So for this one, we have Miss Martina, I'm sorry. I looked at you and then I said your name out loud. For this one, we have available to present or answer questions, Miss Mia Lardy from Modrell Sperling. And is there a motion and a second to consider approval of the revision to section 4D4 of the APS Board of Education Governance Manual?
Point of clarification. Will there be a discussion?
We do motion and second first, and then we move to discussion.
Okay.
I move to approve revisions to section 4D4 of the APS Board of Education Governance Manual. This is Member Jackson.
This is Crystal, a second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Yes.
Thank you. Member Dominguez.
So first, I'd like to understand who proposed this revision, but also the 8.2.
So this was proposed in collaboration between me and Mr. Melendrez. And so it was suggested by Mr. Melendrez as a opportunity to clarify the policy by striking one sentence. And proposed to move forward on the consent agenda as a simple change.
And what is the purpose behind it?
To clarify the language.
Okay, so I want to point out, I'm going to read from the APS Board of Education Governance Manual, section J or section 4J, Board Policy Scope and Development. First paragraph, second sentence. The board may develop, review, and revise any governance policy established by the board through a majority vote of all the members. If that majority vote was taken, in the case of these two amendments, that through polling or surveying, but I don't think so, right? I'm not hearing that. So I want to make sure I'm not assuming. If not, the board tonight then must discuss the merits of the revisions first, then perhaps suggest further amendments and vote whether or not to send the suggested amendments to the policy committee for a first meeting and reading. The process says that after the first meeting and discussion and possible amendments, the policy committee will make the new policy available for a 30-day public review and comment. And I want to cite the first paragraph that introduces the section titled First Meeting. To ensure that policies are well examined before final action, the board will adhere to the following meeting sequence in considering and adopting, and I stress, proposed new policies or policy amendments. Item 2 under first meeting says, once reviewed by the policy committee, the proposed new policy will be made available for public review and comment for 30 days or until the next regularly scheduled policy committee meeting. The public comment period will provide an opportunity for formal public feedback to inform potential changes to the proposed policy. And so I just want to point out that in a week and a half ago, on July 7th, we had a policy committee meeting, and I was informed ahead of time by staff, policy analyst, that I could not introduce a policy, a draft of 3 policies, because it had to come to this body, the full board, for a majority vote to proceed with the development of new policy. But according to this language, it also applies to a review or a revision of current policies. So I'm suggesting that we're getting ahead of ourselves. We need to slow down and approve, according to the policy, the governance manual, approve by majority vote that these revisions, both 8.1 and 8.2, proceed to the policy committee for a first meeting read.
Thank you, Member Dominguez. Are there any responses to that or other questions? Member Jackson.
So my understanding is that this is being revised as a simple strike because there was uncertainty among some board members as to what this policy meant. And this is not a new policy. This is an amendment to a policy. And if you read further down within the board governance manual, it says under second meeting number 3, an amendment will not require that the policy go through an additional reading unless the policy committee chair or board president determines that the amendment needs further study and that an additional reading would be desirable. This is a simple amendment meant to clarify language. This should be just a simple yes or no so that we can move on and start talking about student outcomes.
Thank you, Member Jackson. Any other comments or questions?
I have a comment.
Member Tomorito.
Just to clarify what Board Member Jackson stated, she said some members. So I don't know how the some or who that was. I know I wasn't part of that. So I don't know if the sum means the executive committee that went ahead and did this, or how you guys proceeded to.
I can clarify. I think what she said was some members were confused, not some members made the decision. So I was clear that this decision was made between me and council. And council proposed the language. So there was no discussion with executive committee or anyone else. It was proposed language by council to strike a sentence in the consent agenda to clarify, period.
So I do want to.
I'm sorry, member Tomorito has the floor.
Oh, no, go ahead. You can go ahead.
Member Dominguez.
Organize.
So, Board Member Jackson, you rightfully read from the paragraph on the second meeting, but we haven't even been through the first meeting. And so I'm going to go back to the introductory paragraph. The board.
Member Dominguez, we all have the governance manual in
Okay.
front of us. Again, just to reiterate, the process is that amendments do not have to go through the full board. It's similar to the amendment that we're about to make in the other one. It's was intended to be on the consent agenda, intended to improve, clarify processes in our governance manual, not intended to be an in-depth conversation. So it was removed from consent so we can have a conversation. You've stated what your question and concern are, and I hear you. Based on my interpretation, the staff's interpretation, and council's interpretation, this is not the type of amendment that needs to go through 3 reads. So if there is agreement that it's the type of amendment that needs to go through 3 reads, then we will not approve it here, and we will send it to the policy committee or determine how it gets addressed otherwise.
So I'm confused because we do have a governance manual that is very clear. The board may develop, review, and revise any governance policy established by the board through a majority vote of the members.
That's what we're doing.
But where is the 30-day public input if we're
Not required
skipping?
on a new policy, on a policy that's already in existence. That's only a new policy.
I don't, then we need to review, or we need to revise the governance manual to say that, but that's not what the governance manual says. And it seems, so I'm struck. What's the workaround that's being accomplished here? Because that is not what is written in the governance manual. That's an interpretation, but that I don't see it founded in anything that I read.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions or discussion? All right, so we do have a motion and a second. I already forgot who did those, but I'm sure our board services office have that. We'll move to, and you have that documented, so we'll go ahead and move to a roll call on this agenda item.
Josefina Dominguez,
No.
Crystal Tapia Romero,
Yes.
Heather Benavides,
Yes.
Courtney Jackson.
Yes.
Ronaldo Tomorito,
No.
Janelle Astorga, Danielle Gonzalez.
Yes. Our next agenda item is to consider approval of revisions to section 4M8 of the Board of Education Governance Manual. We have available to answer questions, Jessica Martinez, our policy analyst, as well as Dr. Christy Albright, the coordinator of board services. Is there a motion and a second to consider approval of this agenda item?
I move we approve revision to section 4M8 of the APS Board of Education Governance Manual. This is Member Jackson.
This is Crystal, second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion or question? All right, seeing none, we'll move to a roll call. Dr. Albright, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Josefina Dominguez,
No.
Crystal Tapia Romero,
Yes.
Heather Benavides,
Yeah.
Courtney Jackson,
Yes.
Ronaldo Tomorito,
No.
Janella Astorga, Danielle Gonzalez.
Yes. We will move on to the next item on our agenda, which is discussion items. And so for this, we have an update from the new board member onboarding ad hoc committee. This committee is Vice President Courtney Jackson and Secretary Janelle Astorga. And so our presenter for this agenda item is Member Jackson.
Okay, thank you. So you all should have received a proposed APS school board member onboarding training. This is was developed between myself and board member Astorga and is meant to be the onboarding training that new board members will receive after they are elected in November. So the time frame for this is, you know, essentially November 5th. I think elections are November 4th, November 5th, and January 1st. So what this is meant to address are concerns that we heard over the past couple of years about maybe incomplete onboarding and some statements about what maybe like a wish we was included kind of thing. So I will not read through this with the assumption that everybody already has, but just to give a top level understanding, the first portion of it is pretty brief. It is a kind of a reintroduction and a rediscussion of student outcomes focused governance. The assumption here is that any new board members have already attended both the community training being held on July 30th at 5:30 p.m. in the John Milne boardroom, Noah, and that they have also attended the candidate training that will be held on August 12th at 5 p.m. in the John Milne community boardroom, so that they have already have a deep understanding of that. Then we will move on and to why governance matters. And this kind of goes to what board member Astorga was saying earlier about kind of an understanding of what the difference is between governance and management, and what our roles are as far as do we get into the weeds on things, or do we kind of stay top level? So an in-depth discussion of that, including our roles and responsibilities. Then we go to a 45 minutes where we really try to dive into the manuals and materials and the calendars and the tools that we use on a daily basis, including the governance manual, the implementation timeline, what the differences are between interim goals and guardrails, how legal considerations, who talks to Ms. Lardy, and how do we bring things up? So a real in-depth discussion about that. Then we move to APS Board Member 101, which is introduction to Diligent. What is Let's Talk? What is our community engagement calendar? Orientation and important dates and timelines. Then we go to a wrap up and next steps, and then conclude with some action items, including for them to review the calendars and the manuals. There's also an opportunity, which I skipped, was for all of the cabinet members to have an opportunity to get in front of the new board members, to give them an overview of what their departments do, and including a frequently asked questions tool. So that is kind of an overview, and I am happy to accept suggestions, revisions, or take questions.
Thank you, Member Jackson and Member Astorga, for your work on the committee on behalf of the full board. Dr. Albright, did we receive any proposed amendments, changes, suggestions in the Q&A period related to this?
Without looking them up, I don't remember there being any. They're on the agenda.
No, I didn't see any.
Okay. So we didn't have any suggestions submitted in advance, but we have had additional time to look through this, and so I'll just open up the floor broadly. Is there any reactions, feedback, or suggestions that you'd like to offer to the committee? And this is just a discussion item, so we won't be voting on this. Member Tom Morito.
Yeah, I don't see anything on here about board time and how much time we need to take to do all of this. Second is I just feel it needs more oomph to where it's more practical, to where it's, I see everything as a guidance and a guideline. I just feel that there needs to be more input about, I know there's what's the success stories, or what was highlight how Soji and about board members sharing their stories. I think that there needs to be something in there that they recognize our work and what have been some positives, or just to cite what is the board, what do we do? What are some of the expectations we didn't recognize when we first came on? The other thing is I see nowhere that they at least review a board meeting and understand the process and how that works. Many times they may see it, but they're seeing it from the outside about what we really do in the board meeting. And some discussions, because I know you have Robert's Rules and Orders in there, but I think in seeing a board meeting and understanding the process. But I also think with our goals and guardrails, also mentioning how each department has furthered taking those goals and guardrails and inputting them in every department, that they recognize how important this is as they're moving forward, because it's connected to everything. Also, I think the community engagement piece really needs to be identified more. I know we do have the engagement versus outreach events showing it and their responsibilities for attending those engagements and some of the prior work that goes into those. Because I don't think that's stressed enough about how much work goes into contacts and information and all of those particulars we do in trying to prepare for events. Because it's a lot of time. And I don't think that's understood a lot. But I think the work, and then how does that work, whether you're working, if you're at home? Yeah, it's just a matter of how you're going to dedicate that time. Anyway, that's all I need to say.
Thank you, Member Tom Morito. Any other suggestions?
Yes.
Member Dominguez.
On your last page, important dates and requirements, you have it as the first bullet, NMSBA training, first week of December. I'd suggest adding February law conference, spring regional conference or meeting, July leadership retreat, fall regional conference. And I think that's it.
So just instead of just the first training, like flesh out the whole calendar, but like a year's worth of events.
Correct.
Okay.
Question.
Okay. Member, I will come back to you. I think Member Benavides was approaching the mic. Are you good?
Yes, no, I do have a comment, but are you okay? Member Tomorito, you want to go?
No, I'm just making
Okay.
sure. Yeah, go
Okay.
ahead. I'll go after you.
Okay, so I was calculating the amount of time that was given to each section for the onboarding. And it looks like it's about, close to 3 hours, but in 15-minute, 25-minute, 30-minute intervals. And this is a lot of information for new board members to get. And I don't know if that's enough time. And I'm not saying it should be a 3-day training, but I think that, 15 minutes for governance and versus management roles and responsibilities, 15 minutes is nothing. So I think maybe we should expand that a little bit if possible.
Thank you. I'll just offer that was going to be my feedback as well. I actually wasn't expecting to have a flow of time with specific minute increments. And so my suggestion was going to be like, just cut those, because this is a list of the content that we need. And then we figure out how form follows function. So this is the content we need. Then we figure out how to schedule it or our board services team figures out how to schedule it across time or days that might be needed. But you can take that and meet with the committee and figure it out. Member Tomorito, you had another question?
Just mere suggestion on the state statute for those training requirements, that they are, what, 10 hours for the first year and then 5 proceeding afterwards. That is noted, that they do have requirements that they have to, that they're obligated to get done.
Yeah, and that will also be presented at the candidate board training as well. So it'll hopefully be the second time that that's heard.
Great. Any additional questions or recommendations?
I just have a comment that I think it's very comprehensive and well done, ad hocs.
Yes, thank you. So the charge to this ad hoc committee was to prepare this recommendation. So you do have some feedback. And so we will not dissolve the committee yet until you've integrated the feedback. But as I said, this is not an action item, it's discussion. So the committee will go and integrate that feedback and then work with board services to carry forward, and then the committee will be dissolved. So we'll move on to agenda item 10, which is the president's report. So we'll start with public forum. Although public forum is not an opportunity for dialogue, we do want each speaker to know that you were heard and that the administration and the board are working together on resolutions. Some of the issues that we heard tonight were regarding community engagement, children's health and well-being, as well as the RFP process. I'd also like to speak now and briefly address some recent concerns that were raised by a fellow board member regarding the role of actions of the executive committee and the board president. So there was an assertion that we acted outside the authority granted by the APS governance manual, and that assertion is unfounded. Every action that has been taken by the executive committee has been fully aligned with the responsibilities outlined in the manual, including coordination of board operations, agenda setting, and the handling of routine matters that do not require board action. These functions are not only permitted, they are essential to ensuring that this board spends its valuable time where it matters most, which is monitoring student outcomes in line with board guardrail number 2. There have been no changes made to board policy, no overreach into superintendent responsibilities, and no decisions made outside of the governance framework. What has occurred is routine governance, things like clarifying communication strategies, reviewing poster design, talking about fonts and colors and accuracy, and ensuring that board resources are used both equitably and responsibly. Just a reminder too, that we as a board adopted the student outcomes focused governance model together. And with that, it's a commitment to stay focused on students together. So I urge all of us to continue honoring that commitment to student outcomes by working through the appropriate channels, respecting the roles that we've agreed to as a board, and staying grounded in our shared mission to serve the students and families of APS. That concludes the president's report, and the next Board of Education meeting will be Wednesday, August 6th, 2025 at 5 p.m. here in the Allison Bruce King Educational Complex at 6400 Uptown Boulevard and live streamed at aps.edu. Our next agenda item, we're not done, guys, is to consider approval for the Board of Education to convene an executive session as authorized by the Public Meetings Act to discuss strategy for collective bargaining negotiations as allowed under Section 10-15-1H5. Is there a motion and a second to convene into executive session?
I move for approval for us to convene into executive session.
Thank you. Is there a second? We have a motion from member Tapia Romero and a second from member Benavides. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Josefina Dominguez,
Yes.
Crystal Tapia Romero,
Yes.
Heather Benavides.
Yes.
Courtney Jackson.
Yes.
Ronaldo Tomorito.
Yes.
Danella Starga, Danielle Gonzalez.
Yes. So the meeting will reconvene to open session after